Good morning. More fatal errors revealed in the run-up to the Southport killings.
Counter-terrorism officers failed to recognise that Axel Rudibakana was in danger of being radicalised. They believed that his fixation on massacres was just a world news obsession.
Well, the Home Secretary will now look into changing the referral threshold for PREVENT, the government's counter-terrorism scheme.
Hamas warns there'll be repercussions if, as they say, Israel is continuing to block displaced Palestinians from returning to northern Gaza. That all as 4 Israeli hostages were released yesterday.
WH Smith's is in talks to sell up after 233 years, closing about 500 stores. Could this be another step in the end of the high street?
And we'll be asking, could we replace medication with therapy? And would that help cut down the use of antidepressants? That's our debate later.
Fishermen in Scarborough are worried about their harbour. It could become a tourist trap as councillors plan a multi-million-pound rejuvenation scheme.
A perfect performance. That's how Liverpool head coach Arne Slot described his side's display as they moved 6 points clear at the top of the Premier League. In tennis, we had the oldest ever first-time Grand Slam winner in the Australian Open women's final, with the men's final underway in Melbourne from 8:30 this morning.
After a dry and sunny day for many of us yesterday, there's further wet weather on the way through the rest of today. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
It's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast. There's some. It's rather charming news about Kirsty Allsopp, the TV presenter. You know, the one who does properties, basically. She invited a load of her very best friends to a birthday party for her boyfriend, property tycoon boyfriend.
Oh.
And when they got there, it was their wedding. They decided to get married, but they didn't want to tell anyone. So it was all a very big surprise. And I just thought that's absolutely charming. I mean, you can't help but be happy for her. She's found somebody she never thought she ever would again. And she's found somebody that she's fallen in love with and wanted to get married. And so they planned the wedding as a total surprise to all their friends and relatives.
Oh, well, that's
Isn't
quite
that
nice.
Yeah.
I sort of quite like that.
Yeah, it must have been a shock because you must have turned up thinking, oh, I just got him a funny present instead of a wedding present or something, I don't know. But I think it was a charming thing to do.
But it means he got all the presents and she didn't.
Well, that's probably right, yeah.
I'd be livid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet you would.
But it's a nice thing to do.
It is nice,
Yeah.
it's nice. I sometimes think you can overdo it with weddings.
Yes.
And miss the meaning of it.
If she'd put out proper wedding invitations, the press would have turned up and everything as well. And she didn't want that, so there you are.
Oh, good on her. No, that is quite nice, isn't
Very
it?
much. Congratulations.
Yeah. Now, should we have a look at the Southport situation? Because it's just shocking,
It belies
really.
belief sometimes.
New details have emerged about the Home Office missing several opportunities to identify the Southport child killer, as Mr Rudibakana, as a terror threat.
Yes, it's all over the front page of the Sunday Times. It's pretty hard reading. It claims that the review has found that Rudibakana was referred to an anti-extremism programme 3 times.
It's also revealed his obsession with mass shootings was dismissed by counter-terror officers as an interest in world news. That he wasn't in danger of being radicalised.
It beggars belief, doesn't it? It certainly does in hindsight. Political correspondent for The Spectator, James Heal, joins us now in the studio. I mean, yeah, is it a case of hindsight being 20/20, or is it absolutely unforgivable that these things were overlooked?
Well, this is what the review is going to find out. There's going to be a public inquiry and also a look by various levels of government at really what went wrong here. As you say, the Sunday Times has got this report done by the North West team of PREVENT, and it looks particularly at the 3 different times that Axel Rudibakana was referred to PREVENT, and on each occasion it seems that they were dismissed. Now, I think when we talk about sort of terror and how people become radicalised, we often think about ideology, the role of different philosophies involved, etc. But also this man seemed to have an obsession with just violence, and it seems ridiculous that authorities were willing to repeatedly overlook his rather perverse interest in terror incidents, different bits about how people have been killed, etc., in the London terror attacks. School shootings, and were able to dismiss that as an interest in world news. I mean, this clearly wasn't someone who was reading the papers every day. This was someone who was interested in some pretty sick stuff. And so Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, is very much leaning into this and saying that multiple layers of the state have failed in all of this.
And we know from interviews that were given after the sentencing that there were these various sort of conferences held between different agencies about him, and we were told with confidence that these conferences had taken place, but not what the outcome of any of it was.
Yes, and I think that's going to be one of the things that finds out. I mean, there's so many different strands to it, which is quite interesting. One of which is about him potentially having, I think it was an autism diagnosis, and actually Yvette Cooper is now saying that it needs to be looked at in terms of neurodivergent cases, etc. Does that inhibit discussion around this? You know, people often get things dismissed, etc., and therefore are those red flags being overlooked? And many of the different authorities were involved, mental health services, police, etc., and of course the 3 times Prevent looked at it in 2019 and 2 separate cases in 2021. All these things are going to come out in the inquiry, but it certainly seems that it doesn't seem a great case again in which one case can slip through the cracks of our different systems.
It's interesting, though, you say one case. It's very clear from reading almost in between the lines of this report that the counter-terrorism officers and various other agencies that became involved don't just come across this once in a blue moon. There are a lot of people who fall into this criteria. Young men, particularly, who are obsessed with violence and knives and the school shootings thing, and researching things on the internet that are, frankly, really bad for anyone to look into.
Absolutely, and there's stories in other papers today, including The Sun on Sunday, which is talking about how Yvette Cooper and the Science Secretary, Peter Kyle, are demanding that content about the Southport cases be removed online. And some of the tech giants, which are some of the issues, obviously, we've seen in terms of America, recent coverage, etc., have been unwilling, it seems, to take some of that content down from online. And, of course, that then makes it a real issue for the authorities, because some of this stuff can be flagged in offline situations, in person, etc. But a lot of it's happening online, away from everything. And it then gets into difficult issues, such as when he's ordering rice into his next-door neighbour. How on earth can you legislate against that? So
yeah, that's right. He didn't. There were some things that were delivered not to his home because he knew that his parents might find him out. They were delivered to his neighbour. And
his neighbour, took in a package, absolutely, and then gave them back over. Maybe the parent was involved in signing off some of this. There have been some claims about that. And this is a difficult issue, and I have some sympathy for elements of the authorities, the ones who are saying something like that is very difficult on the ground to legislate against. The key thing is when it gets to institutions and patterns being repeated across the country. Now, there's some reports in the paper suggesting that things like Prevent have changed slightly. They're looking more at cases. I think there's been a 10% increase in cases with neurodivergent cases, which have been referred to Prevent. So there's a sense that perhaps that things have changed slightly, but obviously it clearly wasn't in this tragic case enough.
No, certainly wasn't.
It is very depressing, though, isn't it, that very clearly this sort of obsession with violence is to these counter-terrorism officers, it's not uncommon.
Absolutely
they see a lot of it.
Absolutely, and it's evolving completely, and obviously a lot of it is happening online, and there is going to be something for them to really challenge. It's moved from sort of 4 or 5 groups in a cell or something like that into lone individuals who are clearly able to get a knife and cause some havoc on the streets of Britain.
OK, James, thank you very much indeed. Excuse me, my voice is going. There's no point in all of this, as a lot of it, I mean, they've looked at the knife coming from Amazon, and there's obviously going to be all this hoo-ha about what you can find online. The problem is that can't be the focus of all of this, because you can't stop that. It's Pandora's box. It is open. So you can't try to... If they start saying, well, we need to legislate about what you can see online, that isn't going to work. There are always ways around it. You've got to look at how you detect and work on cases that you can identify, even if they are increasing exponentially.
It's very depressing that it is increasing, by the sound of it, and that
it's awful, isn't it?
These various agencies and the police and counter-terrorism officers are having to deal with this a lot. It's not just, unfortunately, it's not just one case, by the sound of it.
And all this stuff about what you find on Google and all the rest of it, I mean, a lot of this is going to be dark web, isn't it? Which makes up about 99% of the internet, is the stuff we most of us
But, you know,
never see.
we talk about how AI is going to help us be able to detect certain things. Surely they can put AI onto this. There must be algorithms or whatever they call them that can detect whether there are certain young people who are viewing too much of this or doing too much of that or buying too much of something.
Well, yeah, I'm sure they could, but then you've got civil liberties, haven't you? Because it's in effect we'd all be being permanently snooped on.
Yes, we would. But we are anyway, aren't we?
Well, we sort of are, but then do we have to approve it? I don't know. It's a really tough one, actually. Would you rather be snooped on, or would you rather people got through the loopholes and were able to look at this awful stuff?
But when you say we are already, I mean, if you're looking for, you know, a wardrobe online, and suddenly the cookies that will follow you and try and sell you all sorts of different wardrobes or something, you are being followed, you are being monitored
Yes, you
all
are.
the time.
But the difference with the AI thing is that then would have to be fed back to someone, and it would be alerting the authorities if you were looking at too many wardrobes.
Yes.
Or whatever. I mean, do you know what I mean? It would be a case of being monitored by the authorities.
Yes. I mean, we're in the realms of almost science fiction here.
Oh,
aren't we?
yeah.
There
Yeah,
have
we
been
are.
movies made about being arrested for a crime that you haven't yet committed.
Yeah. And it is heading in that direction. But I don't know, is it a price worth paying to try and prevent the sort of tragedy, horror that we saw in Southport? I don't know. I haven't got the answer. Perhaps you've got some thoughts on that, though. gbnews.com/your say.
Right, it's 11 minutes past 6. Israel has prevented, apparently, thousands of displaced Palestinians from returning home to northern Gaza after accusing Hamas of breaching the ceasefire deal.
It comes as 4 female Israeli soldiers were released by Hamas yesterday and reunited with their families after being held in Gaza for 15 months.
Let's now talk to Defence Editor for the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, who joins us now. Good morning, Robert. What were your thoughts yesterday when you saw the release of the 4 hostages and the way they were paraded in public? It was very different from how things happened last week. And what seems to now be the consequences that Israel is saying they broke the deal and now Hamas is fighting back. I mean, are things perilous this morning?
I think they were going to be perilous anyway, but it is lurching forward, as you quite rightly say, that they're making more of a ceremony of it. They're trying to get approval ratings, as it were, from the hostages, who did say that in the end that they had been quite well looked after. And then there was an argument about delaying because a young woman, Arbel Yehud, they'd hoped was going to be released yesterday, was not released. And then a very strange, quite characteristic argument breaks out. Who was she? Is she alive? She appears to be alive. Was she a soldier, which is what Hamas have said, or was she a civilian, or is she a civilian contractor, an expert on radar or communication, as it seems to be the case? Daniel Hagari, the rear admiral, the chief spokesman, then says, publicly, gives a press briefing saying that Hamas have breached the agreement. And then truly behind the scenes, it begins to emerge that Hamas really hasn't been holding this young lady. It has been Islamic Jihad of Palestine, which is a splinter group, quite violent, very, very militant. And it has given an insight into the problems of getting a lot of the hostages and prisoners together as to where they are. And of course, it does raise, I'm sorry to say, the awful question about how many of the remaining hostages on lists are still alive.
Does this explain, Robert, why this is such a long process, even in this first phase, 6 weeks to get 33 people out? I mean, should we have the sense that it's actually taking that long to find these people, to negotiate with whoever's holding them, to actually get them out?
Yes, it does, Stephen, because I think it's indicating the power game going on with Hamas. We're seeing big displays, and which has caused a big stir on the hard right, political and settler right in Israel, saying, look, Hamas is still there. Your war aim was to destroy Hamas. And then American intelligence, as you know, released and put into the public domain that there have been at least 15,000 recruits of militia, of soldiers, in fact, to Hamas since the war began. So they're strong. They're also claiming political authority, which even the right members, that is on the political right in the coalition government, are disturbed about, to the extent that there is a concern that there is a kind of unofficial, but really quite officially strong, if I could put it like that, deadline coming up around Tuesday, because that is the 10, 12-day mark into the first phase of the Gaza peace agreement, whereby they have to discuss the implementation of the next phase, which happens after, forgive me, after 60 days, when there is supposed to be a pullback, further pullback of Israeli forces, a disengagement leading to the third stage, and this is the big one, discussions for the lasting peace based on the proposition of, as stated, a two-state solution. In other words, a Palestinian state. And it's known pretty well that Benjamin Netanyahu, despite all the arm twisting from Washington, is dead against that. So you can see what's happening. Now, the good news is that Steve Witkoff, the special very tough negotiator put in by Trump, is on his way back, and he's going to open talks on this very matter. So Trump is still keeping the momentum going. But if I can add, you were talking on security. What the Israeli forces are worrying about is armed Palestinians moving north into northern Gaza, which seems to be a no man's land, not to say a wasteland, but they're going to set up there, and they're very close to Israel, and it is that they're the best firing points into Israel. We don't see too many rockets, but we're seeing a lot of armed forces. And the key point, you can look at it on a map, every war map of Gaza shows this, is the Netzarim corridor, the band that splits the strip where the Israelis are building up a barrier, although they'd been poised, just to show you how fluid this is, to be ready to pull back if they have to. We've got a very big week coming up.
It's interesting. You use the word fluid. Others would use the word fragile. And if you were the family of any hostage and you were waiting for them, if their name is on the list, for instance, you're waiting for them to be released, you would be so frightened at the moment, wouldn't you, that things are just going to fall apart?
Well, it's very interesting, the hostages' families, that how calm is probably the wrong word, but how philosophical some of them have been. Abu Yehud's family have said, I was just looking at it in the last 24 hours, they put out a statement saying, look, we're delighted that our daughter, our family member is alive and that she's there and she's likely to come out, but they are apprehensive until she comes out. But Hamas have promised she will come out in the next tranche by next weekend.
OK, well, we shall watch it all very closely. Of course, Robert, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. We've got several people being in touch saying you need honey and lemon in very hot water.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yes.
thank you.
Your voice is going. It wasn't like that an hour or so ago.
No, it wasn't. It's just
gotten worse.
started going. I don't know why. Maybe I should just sit here. I'll sit here very quietly. You can just do the whole show.
Oh, thank you very much.
That'd be good.
I tell you what would cheer you up. The weather forecast. Here's Ellie.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. A dry start for many of us, but a cloudy start too, and there is some rain on its way, spreading in from the southwest as we go through the rest of this afternoon. So a damp start for Devon and Cornwall and into South Wales this morning. That area of rain pushing its way north and eastwards as we head towards Sunday afternoon. There will be some sunshine across the very far north of Scotland, but that heavy rain arriving across Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England and eastern parts of England by Sunday afternoon. Heavy blustery showers feeding in quite closely behind, but perhaps a little bit milder across the very far southwest. Temperatures here 10 or 11 degrees, but generally around average elsewhere. As we then go into Sunday evening, those heavy and blustery showers continue to feed in from the southwest. These perhaps merging to longer spells of rain at times, although there will be some breaks in those showers as we head through Sunday evening. Longer spells of rain likely, though, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, into southern parts of Scotland too, and perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground here, but generally falling as rain to lower levels. Northern Scotland just holding on to those clearer skies for a time during Sunday evening, but that rain eventually pushes its way northwards through the rest of Sunday and into the start of Monday, so almost anywhere seeing a damp night to come. Further outbreaks of rain then arriving across the very far southeast, pushing northwards again into the early hours of Monday morning, so perhaps some spray on the roads here during Monday morning's rush hour, and heavy blustery showers continuing to feed in from the southwest, so generally a bit of a milder night under all of that cloud and rain. Into the start of Monday then, and low pressure very much in charge of our weather. Heavy blustery showers continue to pile in from the southwest, perhaps emerging to longer spells of rain across northern areas, and perhaps again falling as sleet and snow over any high ground. That brisk southwesterly breeze does bring us milder temperatures than we saw over the weekend. Temperatures a little above average for the time of year, so 10, perhaps 11 degrees in the south and 6 or 7 degrees further north.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Still to come for you, will Scarborough become a new tourist trap? We'll get more from Anna Riley in just a moment.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good morning, it's 6:24 if you've just joined us. Now, fishermen in Scarborough have condemned plans to mix tourism with the fishing industry at the seaside town's harbour.
Yeah, fishermen believe the harbour should be used exclusively for them to do their job.
But North Yorkshire councillors are considering a multi-million-pound project on the West Pier. Anna Riley has the story.
Scarborough Harbour. It's been here since the 13th century and now lands shellfish, but it's in need of repair. The council plan to renovate buildings along the pier at the same time as making it a destination for hospitality, leisure and events. For fisherman Fred Normandale, this is a land grab only benefiting tourists.
There's nothing wrong with bringing visitors around the harbour, it's great, but not to the exclusion of industry. If we lose that pier, then we lose the fishing industry and we'll lose the next opportunities for the harbour. We've got to keep moving forward, whether it's fishing, tourism, oil. The harbour needs work, the harbour needs using. And if they take it for tourism, it'll be the end of what would be the next adventure for Scarborough Harbour.
With the right facilities, fishermen here believe the harbour and their industry could support the renewables sector. Vessels servicing the world's largest wind farm nearby could use the port, as well as those working on the carbon capture project in Teesside.
Scarborough and Whitby are the two nearest ports to the Dogger Bank. It's not that far to the Rough Gas Field, it's 40 miles southeast. If it brings vessels, it brings crew. If it brings crew, it brings accommodation. If it brings vessels, it brings servicing. It brings fuel, it brings joiners, it brings shipwrights. And all that's gone. We've lost all our infrastructure here. We used to have joiners, blacksmiths, we had engineers. And it's gone because the infrastructure's failed.
Fisherman Bob Roberts believes current plans would destroy Scarborough's maritime legacy.
The fishing industry has survived here for centuries and was the basis on which the town was built. It's really the beating heart of the town down here. It's one of the few communities left that reveres their heritage, you know. It's important that that's preserved.
North Yorkshire Council say the proposals would dramatically improve facilities for the local fishing industry, staff and visitors to the pier. Anna Riley, GB News.
It's so pretty. You can't stop tourists going, can you? Because it's wonderful to show it off. Harbours like that are wonderful, marinas. Surely you can mix both.
But that's what you've got to do. And as he was saying there, I mean, you can't exclude the industry from it. It's got to be a working harbour.
No, but tourists want to go and see the working. They want to see the fishermen doing their job. And it's a wonderful part of the world, Scarborough.
It is. I've not been up there for years.
No, me either. But when the sun comes out, it's wonderful.
It is.
But you want to see both. You want to see the fishermen doing their thing.
Of course you do. It's what keeping the town alive. Right. Time is running out. I think you're down to 5 days. To enter our competition to win £50,000. It's totally tax-free. If you want to enter before the clock stops, here's how you do so.
There's just...
Oh, yeah, very good luck. What a great boost to the new year that would be.
Very nice indeed. Right, don't go anywhere. We've got the sport heading your way very soon with Aidan McGee.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Estelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This was thought to be a Ruskin. Ruskin was a very considerable polymath, an artist as well as many other things. So, do you know why it was submitted for reappraisal? Was there a bit of a suspicion that it had been misidentified?
No, as you say, you know, it's a service that Christie's offer. You can submit an artwork that you have, so anyone can submit it and request an estimate, and then the auction house's appraisal service allows you space as well to describe it and ask for evaluation. And Christie's sort of looked at it behind the sheet of dirty old glass and recognised a sort of Turner-esque mood and feel and ambience about it. And because there was this close relationship between Ruskin and Turner, which is fascinating, we'll come on to that shortly, but they sort of felt, well, the brushstrokes are very strong, the line is very economic, and the colour of the palette seems to be rather Turner-esque. And then they called in a specialist paper historian who confirmed that actually the paper that was used was one that Turner favoured himself. So yes, it was originally considered to be by Ruskin, but then we discovered something more magnificent. And don't forget, what's really interesting, now it's for sale. The lucky buyer is not just buying a picture. The lucky buyer is buying a life story, a relationship that actually changed the course of art history because of the relationship between Ruskin and Turner themselves.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Aidan's got the sport for us this morning. Pep Guardiola, well, he had a right old go at his team, didn't he? But they've proved him wrong. Or right, maybe, I don't know.
Well, yeah, exactly. It wasn't going well, though. They conceded a goal against Chelsea in the first few minutes, and a couple of debutants didn't cover themselves in glory either. But I always think it's a good sign of mentality in the dressing room, man, when, yes, your manager makes those pointed comments. I do think there was some method behind it as well. Yes. And they look around each other and say, actually, that isn't a representation of us at all. Let's get out there and dispatch Chelsea, who have not been in great form, but they've still been decent this season, certainly compared to most of last season. And they dispatched Chelsea 3-1, and I still think they've got a real chance of getting into the Champions League, which I think league-wise is the best they can hope for this season. But that wasn't the only story in the Premier League yesterday. I mean, let's look at Bournemouth. Bournemouth have lost one match since October the 5th. They've quietly crept up on the radar, or under the radar, I should say, and they're 1 point off the Champions League places now. Now, we talked about Nottingham Forest. We've been talking about them for weeks, because Nottingham Forest hadn't lost since December the 4th either, and they went to Bournemouth yesterday and lost 5-0. They were swatted away, particularly in the second half. Yeah, they conceded 4 goals against Bournemouth. And they've got this outstanding Spanish manager as well, who just seems to be tearing it up. It was controversial when they appointed him, because the previous guy, Gary O'Neill, was doing quite well, and he kept them in the Premier League. And it's not often that you sack a manager who's doing relatively well. You have to really believe in the guy that you're bringing in. And over the period of time since they did that, which is, 18 months ago now, he's really come good. My fear for Bournemouth is that he won't be there that much longer, because he's shown with his recruitment and his coaching and the way he sets up his team and the way he connects with his players that he could be an outstanding manager for years to come. Wolves as well, losing at home to Arsenal. Arsenal, ridiculous sending off, it has to be said. VAR under the microscope once again. Miles Lewis-Kelly committed this foul near half-time, which in a Sunday League match, and you just, as a player, you take this foul, you'd make this foul for the team. You're stopping a counter-attack, you'll take the fine, you'll take the yellow card, because you know that the team is, you've dug them out of a difficult position. And he gets a straight red card by Michael Oliver, who's meant to be one of our best referees, and it was verified by VAR. They said, yeah, that's absolutely fine.
What actually happened? Can you describe it? Or did
Somebody
blocking somebody else?
There was a counter-attack by Wolves, OK, so even as a young player, you see the situation developing around the pitch. You think, right, OK, if I let this guy go, my teammates are going to be in trouble here. So you just opt to bring the player down. They call it taking one for the team. And so, yes, you'd expect a yellow card.
Yeah.
But
not a
maybe
red
they're
one.
clamping down on cynical play. I don't know. Maybe there's something to be said for that. But it seemed very peculiar. And a few of the pundits afterwards were saying it's the worst decision they'd ever seen in the history of the game, which I think is a little bit, probably a little bit going over the top. But nonetheless, it raised a few eyebrows.
Was it a pivotal moment?
It actually proved not to be. Normally, when you lose a man these days in football, given the athleticism of the players, it usually means you're going to lose. But Arsenal went on to win in the second half, which was a great achievement. I suppose you could say that they're two teams from the opposite end of the table, but nonetheless, going out on the road there, away from home, decent result nonetheless.
Yeah. Can we have a look at the tennis?
Yes, exactly. It's the men's final today.
8:30 this morning. Alex Zverev is in the final. His third final. That's I put up two fingers. Sorry, his third.
Don't put up two fingers.
No, certainly, I certainly wouldn't. No. It was an accident. His third final. He's lost the previous two, so he's going for something a bit special there. My worry is that he wasn't tested against Djokovic, was he?
No.
Because he only played that.
Ultimately, no.
He only played that one set against Djokovic. Djokovic was injured. Maybe the freshness will stand him in good stead.
But I tell you what, we don't have to, after what we saw yesterday, we've got to be prepared for a shock, haven't we?
Without doubt. I mean, look, I didn't even mention Madison Keys that much because I was absolutely convinced that she would lose this match. She won it in 3 sets.
3 straight sets.
She did. I mean, she's had shoulder injuries throughout 2024. That put paid to her interest at Wimbledon and in the Australian Open last year. And she managed to fight back. And she's the oldest first-time winner of a Grand Slam. She's 30 next week. It's quite rare. You know, it doesn't sound old to us, but in sport terms, that's quite a senior age these days. And she pulled off a wonderful result yesterday. Who knows if she can go on and dominate? That remains to be seen. But if you look at the route she took to the final, she didn't have it easy. Elena Rybakina, Svitolina, Iga Swiatek, and then Sabalenka in the final. It's not as if she got any gimmies on the way through. She did it the hard way, and congratulations to her. And as I say, we got the final this morning. I think Yannick Sinner could become the first Italian to win 3 Grand Slams. But if he will, I think the tennis authorities might be hoping that he doesn't win because he's got a doping charge hanging over his head.
Oh, yes,
WADA are looking for a 2-year ban. If he goes and wins a 3rd Grand Slam in a year and then is charged with doping and is banned for 2 years, that's not a good look for the sport, and that's exactly what Nick Kyrgios warned against recently.
What would that mean under the circumstances? Would he lose? Would his title be passed on?
No, not at all. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. No, they don't, because I don't. Even in most sports, you don't get retrospective punishments like that with titles being withdrawn, because what happens then? The team who finished second 10 years ago, are they meant to go out and have an open-top bus parade? It just doesn't work. The victory doesn't feel real. But it happened with Juventus in the Serie A in Italy. They were stripped of a couple of titles and awarded to the team that finished second, but it didn't feel like a victory. You leave it where it is, and the punishment has to be something that's going forward rather than looking back.
OK. Should we have a quick look at Marcus Rashford?
Yes.
He wants to head to Barcelona.
Yeah.
He's prepared to take a pay cut.
Listen, I think it's very generous of him. It's 300 grand a week he's on at Man United. That's why he can't get a move, because nobody else is prepared to match his wages. But he's prepared, apparently, to drop to £240,000, £250,000 a week. Borussia Dortmund are interested. Arsenal are interested. They need a striker. Maybe he can solve their problem. It's not as far to go from Manchester to London compared to Manchester to Barcelona, although Barcelona is the one that's piquing his interest right now. But they've got financial worries of their own, Barcelona, and I don't know whether they want to commit even to a short-term deal that requires paying a misfiring striker £250,000 a week. I tell you what, he's got lots to prove, because I just don't think he's going to get that contract elsewhere. He just has not done enough in the last 2 or 3 years to warrant that kind of outlay from any team. So I think it might be wishful thinking, but I think it could be a loan until the end of the season. But we're coming down to the last week of the window, and we're going to see some moving. There's no question about that.
OK. Aidan, thank you very much indeed.
Yep, absolutely. Do stay with us. Still to come. We've got newspapers, haven't we, coming up? First of all, though, if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
There's plenty of sunshine on offer for many over the next couple of days in Europe, but there is some heavy rain as well, particularly for parts of Portugal, northern Spain, northwestern parts of France, and some blustery westerly winds as well continuing throughout Monday. Further east, though, there is plenty of sunshine on offer for southern parts of Italy, Greece, Cyprus, seeing plenty of sunshine throughout Monday afternoon. Temperatures here generally in the mid to high teens, with the highest temperatures likely across Tenerife, where we'll see temperatures around 22 or 23.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Lee Anderson's Real World. Fridays from 7 p.m.
Aaron McLean, the goal machine here, used to play for Peterborough United. You bagged loads of goals for them back in the day. But I've got a bone to pick with you, young man. You scored at the City ground against Nottingham Forest for, was it Hull City?
For Hull City, yeah.
Why did you do that?
Well, that was my job, unfortunately. I must say, that was actually one of my favourite goals.
Was it really?
Because I remember, obviously, playing at the City ground, unbelievable stadium, historic.
It is great.
So, and we beat you 1-0.
OK, no need to rubbish it. These sports clubs, whether it's football or rugby or whatever, should offer two alternatives, either a professional footballer, or if you don't quite make it, you can still go and play football at a lower level, but have a career as well, maybe be an electrician or a plumber.
100%. You know, listen, I've had multiple conversations with various different people, whether it's the PFA or whether it's clubs. Even players who do have careers, you know, there's so many that don't make it and don't quite make it to the level or only play at a lower level. There's so many that do have long careers, but once you come to the end of that, you've spent, you know, for me, I spent 20 years as a professional footballer. Once I finished playing, what do you then do for the rest of your life? You know, at 35, once you retire, you still have to have a purpose in life. Yeah. But I'd almost be starting from ground zero. I'm fortunate that I went into coaching and then went into the media.
That's good.
But for every one of me, there's hundreds that don't. And I've got so many friends who, I've got to say, you know, have really, really struggled on the, you know, mental health side.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually, because you go from, like, playing in stadiums, big stadiums, small stadiums, crowds, singing your name, and all that sort of stuff, that adulation, the buzz of winning games, and, you know, the downs of losing games, and you go from that to sort of nothing when you finish. I mean, that's a big come down there.
It's a huge come down.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Time to have a look through the papers at 6:43 with political commentator Lynn May and social campaigner Winston Davis. Morning to you.
Morning.
Winston, let's have a look at the Sunday Times, should we? And the fatal errors around the Southport killings.
Yeah, so it's just, you know, still going on. They believe that he had an interest in current affairs, but he wasn't being radicalised. Intentionally, I'm not going to say his name. And it's, but clearly he was. You know, he was looking at all manner of genocides. They said that one person said that he could name every single genocide and how many people had been killed, including Rwanda, Hitler, Genghis Khan. You know, he's got such a breadth of obsession with it.
And yet the counter-terrorism people who are trained in this looked at all of that and said he's just interested in world news.
I think this is some sort of cover-up, if I'm honest. Obviously, this isn't an assumption. But there's so many points where there's been failures. In terms of, you know, potential connections with his family and the Rwanda genocide. Keir Starmer does not seem to be wanting to dig deep into that. And I do think when we're seeing these sorts of heinous crimes, we need to have the parents involved as to what was going on in the house. You know, he caught knives on his son before. What happened after that? I think there needs to be a public inquiry, potentially a judicial review.
Well, there is going to be an inquiry,
yeah.
So, and maybe we'll get to the bottom of that. But there's clearly, it's gone very, very badly wrong. Lynn, let's have a look at the Sunday Telegraph, should we? Rachel Reeves is at war.
With?
Yes, well, she's giving a stark warning to her potential backbenchers or anyone else by the looks of it with regards to her plan for growth. Now, there has been some more left of the party Labour MPs that have tried to shut her down because of green policy. The potential of a third runway at Heathrow. Many of the left of the party are not going to be happy about that. And in order for her to look at growth, she has to be more ardent when it comes to net zero, especially as we can see with the whole vibrancy around Trump and his net zero, scrapping it, saying it's nonsense, and how the tone of the country here is reflective similarly to that. And I think she's trying to show the country that Labour mean business for growth. But whenever I look at her tweets, whenever I look at her interviews, they're very cardboard, they're very plastic. It's just, we want growth, we are the party of growth. But what does that mean? So she talks about home building. She's going to hopefully scrap a lot of the bureaucracy around planning. And what that will mean is it will make it a lot easier for councils to build. But we know councils no longer build. We know that we don't have a great appetite for people to be able to build because we don't have the manpower to be able to do so. So I'm really interested to see what this whole we mean growth, we want growth, I'm the party of growth. I don't see it personally.
For me, all of a sudden, it feels like we've had Trump getting in, and all of a sudden Labour are like, right, let's go, let's get going. And it's like, well, 6 months ago you come into power. Let's have all this positive talk of positivity 6 months ago. You know, all of a sudden he's in. It's like, right, let's start, cutting red tape. He's cut red tape in America. Let's cut red tape here.
Her budget is anti-growth. Her budget is going to see certain businesses decimated. We've already seen Sainsbury's potentially let going of 3,000 staff. So how is she the person for growth?
Well, it's very interesting, isn't it, that she is saying this to, as you say, backbenchers and other people who are obviously more negative about her plans than she is. She's having to shut down that criticism from her own party.
And she may even suggest of cutting sickness benefits. I don't know what Labour's doing. I don't know who their voter is at the moment. I don't know if they're trying to appeal to the previous Tory voter, the new Reform voter, and they're definitely not appealing to the original fundamental Labour voter or the left-leaning of the party anyway.
The thing is, I was really, positive about them coming in just for a change. 14 years...
That was their slogan, change.
But I'm like, it can't get any worse, right? As a business owner, I'm a small business owner, I'm like, come on, let's have some...
You're feeling it now, are you?
Yes. Yeah.
Are you really?
Well, I'm considering much more about... I work in construction. I don't want to have full-time employees.
Yeah.
I don't want them because I know that there's a restriction on me. There's taxes that are going to come on me and everything to restrict me from growing. I've just bought my first home a couple of years ago. I was thinking, right, this year, let's try and get some money to get a second home. And I'm thinking, nah, I'm not doing that.
They are not in support of purchasing property at all.
But this is the basic issue. Small businesses are the green shoots of our economy and all the rest of it. We know that, and if small businesses like yours are saying, well, we're not going to employ anyone, that's fundamentally, it's a fundamental problem.
It's not aspirational. This is my challenge with it. I said, and I'm very open. I'm open. Some political party, please come and speak to me and give me hope, and I'll get behind you. Because at the moment, I'm like,
I warned everyone. I did video after video. I said, listen, don't look at identity politics. Labour are not for anyone when it comes to business, growth, property ownership, business ownership, and we can see it now.
Yes, well, it would seem.
Cheers, Lynn.
Sunday Times, Winston. I can't get my head around this. So Mark Rowley, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, has said Apple and Google are enabling phone theft.
Yeah, they're saying that up to a third of crime in London is down to phone theft, and that it's too easy for criminals to steal them and reuse them, although Apple or Google saying, no, you can't do it. But they're being sent disproportionately to North Africa. So I said to Lynn in the back, I was like, do you know what? It's probably more likely not probably unlocking them. They're probably taking them down like a chop shop, taking them down and selling the bits of it. A 1,500 quid phone, is sellable. But also, I think we've got to be careful in that. Although I'm conscious of my phone, I'm holding on to it tighter when I'm out on the street. I'm thinking I'm not letting one of these guys and them bikes come past try it. Yeah. I say only, it's a £20 million business for them, right? That's the actual amount that they're valuing it at. When you look at it against fraud and drugs, we're looking at 19 billion for drugs, 11.4 billion for fraud. These are far, far higher markets and problems for us economically. Although, listen, no one wants their phone snatched. And actually, not
it
about...
still needs to be looked at, though, because I think it's like the first point of contact as a victim crime. Like fraud, you wouldn't feel that level of terror with someone snatching your phone. And I think, to be honest, sorry to interject, this is a complete deflection from Mark Rowley, if I'm honest with you.
Yes.
There's phones all over the world. There's countries all over. I go to countries to visit countries, and I don't have that sense of panic someone's going to steal my phone and swipe it from me. It doesn't happen all over the world. So this whole idea of him blaming tech companies, no, policing are failing.
But he says the organised crime business model is enabled by the reusability and resaleability of stolen phones. Well, we'd be going mad, wouldn't we, if Apple were making everything that was supposedly just disposable?
Exactly.
I mean, but it's all meant to be the green thing, is that everything is reusable and...
I don't disagree with you, Lynn. Like, at the end of the day, fundamentally, I shouldn't feel, and we shouldn't feel like conscious of having our phones out. I think someone's going to steal it. 100%. There's more visible policing. There's got more proactive policing. Yeah. But it's indicative of the social issues we've got at the moment.
But it's sort of treated as well as spoken of as a low-level crime, isn't it?
I don't think
and there is a growing acceptance of what they're calling low-level crime. Like most of us, actually most people now have witnessed shoplifters at it.
Yeah.
Big deal time, you know. And it's the same with the snatching of phones. It's now done by gangs. They're organised gangs. And there's almost an acceptance that this is part of 21st century life.
In London as well,
be.
specifically. And I just think, you know, policing has to improve, and we are one of the most watched cities in terms of CCTV. I think the only country ahead of us is China. Why is it happening so often, and what is going wrong with London, Sadiq Khan, policing? We need to really get Bobby's back on the beat, and this needs to stop, because they only do it because they know they can.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lynn, let's finish off with the Daily Star Sunday. Looking at bald men. Do you fancy a bald fella?
I don't really like bald men, you know. I don't really like bald men.
Bald men are more likely to get chatted up by women.
Really? I don't know. I do know women that really do like a bald man, baldies as they refer to them here. If they've got a good beard, then potentially, because what it says here, a poll of 1,000 blokes, 500 bald and 500 with hair, found the bald men were more likely to get chatted up, as you said. So, I mean, you know, there's a market for it. Not everyone needs to go to Turkey and get their hairline renewed.
But maybe it's to do with the age of the man or woman. Maybe an older woman likes it, because a young man
is more likely to have a head of hair.
Yeah.
Do you think also there's some connotation? They used to always say that women like a bit of a bad boy. Bald men maybe look... Because I always look at... Even though I don't like them, I always look at Prince William and I think, why don't you just take off the sides? Why are they just there?
Oh, I know.
No, I look at him and think if his mother was still alive, he'd have been down the hair clinic years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I don't know, what do you reckon, Winston?
No,
Do you worry about losing your hair?
Well, this is the thing. I've still got it.
You've got a good hairline, you.
Do you know what? In the mirror, I'm checking it to make sure it's not getting too thin. But, no, I mean, I think if you've got a bald head, that's a problem, especially jokes between guys.
Unless you've got a beard. If you've got a good beard, you can carry it off. You can't have bald face and you look like an egg if you have bald everything.
It's probably nothing to do with the hair. It may well just be down to character.
Oh, do you know what, actually? I would say that. If you've got a bald head, then you've got to work
You've got to be
harder. You've got to work harder.
They're chatted up more, though. It can't be character, because they're chatted up more than men with hair.
Yeah, maybe once you get to know them.
You're not the fashion, Winston, sorry.
Well, it is an
I'm off the
increase in
market.
testosterone. The more testosterone you have, the more it metabolises into something that makes your hair come out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's why traditionally they've said bald men are more attractive to
More
women
masculine.
because it shows more masculinity.
Oh, really?
Right, OK.
All right, well, maybe I need to get worried then, but...
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about it. It's not worth worrying about. But I really do
it's not.
think that the real attraction of a man is when you're sort of chatting to them and you get to know their personality.
True.
Isn't it?
True.
Surely. Although I do like a head of hair.
Well, there you go, you see. There you go. Right, thanks both. We'll see you a little bit later on.
Thank you.
Let's have a look at the weather for you with Ellie.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed Heat Pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. A dry start for many of us, but a cloudy start too, and there is some rain on its way, spreading in from the southwest as we go through the rest of this afternoon. So a damp start for Devon and Cornwall and into South Wales this morning. That area of rain pushing its way north and eastwards as we head towards Sunday afternoon. There will be some sunshine across the very far north of Scotland, but that heavy rain arriving across Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England and eastern parts of England by Sunday afternoon. Heavy blustery showers feeding in quite closely behind, but perhaps a little bit milder across the very far southwest. Temperatures here 10 or 11 degrees, but generally around average elsewhere. As we then go into Sunday evening, those heavy and blustery showers continue to feed in from the southwest. These perhaps merging to longer spells of rain at times, although there will be some breaks in those showers as we head through Sunday evening. Longer spells of rain likely though, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, into southern parts of Scotland too, and perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground here, but generally falling as rain to lower levels. Northern Scotland just holding on to those clearer skies for a time during Sunday evening, but that rain eventually pushes its way northwards through the rest of Sunday and into the start of Monday, so almost anywhere seeing a damp night to come. Further outbreaks of rain then arriving across the very far southeast, pushing northwards again into the early hours of Monday morning, so perhaps some spray on the roads here during Monday morning's rush hour, and heavy blustery showers continuing to feed in from the southwest, so generally a bit of a milder night under all of that cloud and rain. Into the start of Monday then, and low pressure very much in charge of our weather. Heavy blustery showers continue to pile in from the southwest, perhaps emerging to longer spells of rain across northern areas, and perhaps again falling as sleet and snow over any high ground. That brisk southwesterly breeze does bring us milder temperatures than we saw over the weekend. Temperatures a little above average for the time of year, so 10, perhaps 11 degrees in the south and 6 or 7 degrees further north.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Dave, good luck.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. More fatal errors revealed in the Southport killings.
Counter-terrorism officers failed to recognise that Axel Rudibakabana was in danger of being radicalised. They believed that his fixation with massacres was simply an obsession with the news.
Well, the Home Secretary will now look into changing the referral threshold for PREVENT, the government's counter-terrorism scheme.
Hamas is already warning of repercussions if Israel, they say, continues to block displaced Palestinians from returning to northern Gaza. This, of course, as 4 Israeli hostages were released yesterday.
WH Smith's is in talks to sell up after 233 years. It could close about 500 stores. Is it another step towards the end of the high street?
And we're asking, could replacing medication with therapy help cut down the use of antidepressants? We'll be debating that later.
And fishermen in Scarborough are worried their harbour is going to become a tourist trap as councillors plan a multi-million-pound rejuvenation scheme.
Good morning. Teenage darts sensation Luke Littler proved he is fallible after losing in the semi-final of the Dutch Masters in Den Bosch. In tennis, we had the oldest ever first-time Grand Slam winner in the Australian Open women's final, with the men's final underway in Melbourne from 8:30 this morning.
After a dry and sunny day for many of us yesterday, there's further wet weather on the way through the rest of today. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Loads of you getting in touch about low-level crime. And it's a ridiculous issue that all this crime is going on and it is just ignored. I can't understand how it is being allowed to happen. Is it just because the police service is so pared back now?
I don't know, but it's a cancer in our society, isn't it? Because the minute we accept it, and we are already accepting it, aren't we? Certainly the police are accepting. I mean, they don't turn out to burglaries anymore, do they?
No.
Things like that.
No, it's crime.
If you accept it, then society is beginning to creak at the edges.
But also, is it not a question of if it's not recorded officially and the police don't go out to it, it doesn't count towards figures and that suits the government?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a little bit cynical, I know, but it has happened.
Because you still can get a crime number.
Yes.
So you can get it over the phone.
You get it over the phone, yeah.
I mean, if you've been burgled and you ring the police, they say they can't send anyone out, but they'll give you a crime number, and that's what you need for insurance.
Yeah.
That is an acceptance of burglary.
Of course it is.
And burglary is terrifying, whether or not you're there. You come home and find that you've been burgled. It's terrifying because somebody's been in your space.
And the idea as well of this whole shoplifting thing, that you don't even try and call the stores aren't calling the police now because they know they're not going to get a response.
You go on YouTube, there are videos all over it of amazing scenes, frankly, where gangs would just go into Apple stores and just raid them all over the world. This isn't just in Britain, and people just obviously stand back. You have to let it happen because you don't know how violent these people.
But that's the other issue because I mean, back in the day, if you were caught shoplifting, someone would grab you and sort of drag you into the manager's office. Not that it ever happened to me, but that was the thing, wasn't it? You get dragged into the manager's office while they called the police, and you had to sit there shamefaced. Yeah. What is it now? The fact that people are too violent, they've got knives.
Well, that's what you're scared of, isn't it? You know, when you're in a new city and you don't know where you're going, and you've got your phone and it tells you where to go. Right, and so you're walking along the street with your mobile phone on display, and now you think twice about that, don't you?
Yeah.
I remember being in a shop when I was a kid, and it was a toy shop, and the owners just suddenly closed the store, and they didn't tell us why we were being kept in, but the police turned up about 15 minutes later, and they opened the door, and the shopkeeper said, "That person there has been shoplifting." Not me, incidentally, but someone. But I can't imagine that happening today.
No, but that's what should be happening.
Yes, it should.
It's exactly what should be happening.
But it's a hell of a risk because that person could have had a weapon. That's probably why they don't get involved.
The other thing I'm very interested in, and we're going to be debating it this hour as well, is if you've ever been to the doctor complaining that you're very low and you're feeling bad or whatever, would you rather have had a therapist in the GP or surgery and be referred to a therapist? Or did you feel sort of just palmed off when they wrote you a prescription for antidepressants? A lot of people don't like taking antidepressants. They do because that's all they've been offered. I wonder if you'd prefer to be offered therapy.
You see, I think there's a problem with this because there's an assumption that issues can be solved with therapy. Whereas for some people, actually therapy is not the answer.
But there's also, I mean, there's the counter-argument to that is that there's a problem in that thinking that taking a pill, taking some sort of substance is going to cure what is basically a depression.
Yes, but if that depression's caused by a lack of serotonin, which a lot of it is, and you're taking a serotonin, we call it an SSRI, that gives you more serotonin, and therefore you will feel better, Why not do that rather than having to wait an extra 12 months while they say, we'll try therapy for a year?
I mean, there is this suggestion that therapists should be put into GP surgeries. But, you can't get therapy now without an incredible wait. So where's the money going to come from to pay for a therapist in every GP surgery?
I just don't think it's the answer. I don't at all. I think these pills, which are cheap and really help a lot of people, why not?
No, they don't suit everybody.
No.
Are they cheap?
Yeah, they're cheap. They're not an expensive pill.
Anyway, if you've got a story to tell us, please do. And we'll be debating that later on.
Right, our main news today. New details have emerged about how the Home Office missed several opportunities to identify the Southport child killer Axel Rudakabana as a terror threat.
Yes, the Sunday Times claims that a review has found that Rudakabana was referred to an anti-extremism programme 3 times.
It also revealed his obsession with mass shootings was dismissed by counter-terrorism officers as an interest in world news, and he wasn't in danger of being radicalised.
We've got political correspondent for The Spectator, James Heal, with us. It does seem extraordinary that so many red flags, as they call them now, were missed. Or if they were acknowledged, they weren't treated seriously.
Absolutely, and looking at the details, according to this report in the Sunday Times, this is someone who, aged 13 and 14, was going to his teacher, asking about things to do with, genocide and things about sort of Colonel Gaddafi's death, etc. Very sort of outlandish for someone that age. And as you say, 3 times this person was referred to the Prevent programme, and each time they were sort of dismissed as being sort of by the by. But actually, I think that clearly this was all part of a pattern of increasingly radicalised behaviour, and obviously what started as sort of online browsing, etc., soon turned into more extreme material and more graphic content.
I mean, the issue is, and perhaps there can be a level of understanding if someone's referred once and you say, well, they just seem to be having this rather obscure interest or whatever. But when they've been referred multiple times, there is clearly an issue.
Absolutely, and I think the government recognises that, so they've launched this review already prior to the sentencing into whether Prevent is working or not. It's often said that the army is fighting the last war. I think potentially with this case, Prevent perhaps has been looking too much, for instance, at Islam and ideology, rather than just people becoming obsessed generally with terror online. And that seems to be the big jump over the last few years or so, with Ben just at home looking at this stuff, this content, and not particularly downloading stuff just from Islam, but according to the Sun on Sunday, there were 164,000 different documents he was looking at. This was looking at all different areas, etc. And so some of the initial reports we had about this case perhaps were slightly misleading.
But there's even it's more than a suggestion. There's evidence that his own parents asked for help with him because they were severely worried about his obsessions and the fact that he was owning knives and buying knives.
And again, it's one of those cases where you see all these sort of cries for help, and even Axel Rudakabana himself was talking to his teacher about this stuff. He was talking and referring himself to different crime agencies and writing to them proactively, and all of that was ignored. The ideal centre would be if you're able to kind of combine all those different warnings at different levels of the system, and of course, most notably the fact that this was 3 different referrals, and cross-section that, and they're able to say, look, this is clearly someone who's identifying a repeat pattern. This isn't just 1 or 2 red flags. This is a whole consistent pattern.
Yes, but there were conferences where different sections of the authorities gathered together to discuss him. So it's not as if the agencies weren't talking to each other.
Absolutely, and I think that we're going to find out more details exactly about that, because what that's so frustrating is how there didn't seem any great urgency to deal with this in terms of mental health, dealing with the law enforcement authorities. So I do suspect that's going to be one of the main things that come of it. And I think that it's striking that how the Home Secretary is saying everything has failed, all the agencies have failed, and being very willing at this early stage, prior to the inquiry, to be very critical of the authorities.
I mean, we all believe, we the public have heard of Prevent, and we all believed until now that they are the experts on this and that they are keeping tabs. And maybe in other regions of Britain they are fit for purpose. But one can only conclude that where they were operating over at Rudakabana in his area, they weren't fit for purpose. And that's appalling. It takes this terrible case to expose this.
Well, that's unfortunately so often the case with government programmes. It will take a case like this to expose its wrongdoings, and also looking at if it's going to be fit for what the current challenges are in 2025. I think mental health orders are something that's grown massively up the agenda in recent years. Is that something that Prevent is taking enough into account when it kind of weighs this? And I think what's striking in this case, and has been the case with sort of last week with Labour's rhetoric around grooming gangs and saying that cultural sensitivity shouldn't inhibit discussion. Yvette Cooper's coming out today and saying that discussions around sort of neurodivergence shouldn't inhibit how the law authorities respond to this. It doesn't matter what case you've got, etc. No. You should be able to spot a red flag and treat it as such.
Well, exactly. The idea that someone may have a mental condition and that then is somewhat deflects the idea that they need to be further looked into is absolutely crackers.
Absolutely.
We don't know if that is the case with him or not, but as I say, you've got to not let these things get in the way of a proper investigation.
Absolutely.
If the man is dangerous, he's dangerous.
Absolutely, and I think that'll be one of the things that come out from it.
Whatever, yeah.
OK, James, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
11 minutes past 7. Now, fishermen in Scarborough have condemned plans to mix tourism with the fishing industry at the seaside town's harbour.
Yeah, fishermen believe the harbour should be used exclusively for them to do their job.
But North Yorkshire councillors are considering a multi-million-pound project on the West Pier. Sounds good, but is it? Anna Riley has the story.
Scarborough Harbour. It's been here since the 13th century and now lands shellfish, but it's in need of repair. The council plan to renovate buildings along the pier at the same time as making it a destination for hospitality, leisure and events. For fisherman Fred Normandale, this is a land grab only benefiting tourists.
There's nothing wrong with bringing visitors around the harbour, it's great, but not to the exclusion of industry. If we lose that pier, then we lose the fishing industry and we'll lose the next opportunities for the harbour. We've got to keep moving forward, whether it's fishing, tourism, oil. The harbour needs work, the harbour needs using. And if they take it for tourism, it'll be the end of what would be the next adventure for Scarborough Harbour.
With the right facilities, fishermen here believe the harbour and their industry could support the renewables sector. Vessels servicing the world's largest wind farm nearby could use the port, as well as those working on the carbon capture project in Teesside.
Scarborough and Whitby are the two nearest ports to the Dogger Bank. It's not that far to the Rough Gas Field, it's 40 miles southeast. If it brings vessels, it brings crew. If it brings crew, it brings accommodation. If it brings vessels, it brings servicing. It brings fuel, it brings joiners, it brings shipwrights. And all that's gone. We've lost all our infrastructure here. We used to have joiners, blacksmiths, we had engineers. And it's gone because the infrastructure's failed.
Fisherman Bob Roberts believes current plans would destroy Scarborough's maritime legacy.
The fishing industry has survived here for centuries and was the basis on which the town was built. It's really the beating heart of the town down here. It's one of the few communities left that reveres their heritage, you know. It's important that that's preserved.
North Yorkshire Council say the proposals would dramatically improve facilities for the local fishing industry, staff and visitors to the pier. Anna Riley, GB News.
Well, I have to say, it looks pretty even there, and the sun isn't even out properly. So it's a lovely place.
If these things have got to work together, there's no point... regeneration is a good thing, but you can't do it at the expense of the fishermen, of the business, of the trade. You need to have the two working hand in hand, don't you, so that the fishermen can get on with their work.
It's like we said earlier, actually, tourists, that would be good, a multi-million-pound project. It would be fantastic. But you don't have to... rule out one section of society, do you? Tourists, if they come, want to watch the fishermen. It's part of the whole thing, isn't it?
I think that would be quite a good thing. But you've got to make it work. Let's hope they can. Anyway, if you are heading out and about today, you're going to want to see what the weather's doing for you. Here's Ellie.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed Heat Pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. A dry start for many of us, but a cloudy start too, and there is some rain on its way, spreading in from the southwest as we go through the rest of this afternoon. So a damp start for Devon and Cornwall and into South Wales this morning. That area of rain pushing its way north and eastwards as we head towards Sunday afternoon. There will be some sunshine across the very far north of Scotland, but that heavy rain arriving across Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England and eastern parts of England by Sunday afternoon. Heavy blustery showers feeding in quite closely behind, but perhaps a little bit milder across the very far southwest. Temperatures here 10 or 11 degrees, but generally around average elsewhere. So we then go into Sunday evening. Those heavy and blustery showers continue to feed in from the southwest. These perhaps merging to longer spells of rain at times, although there will be some breaks in those showers as we head through Sunday evening. Longer spells of rain likely though, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, into southern parts of Scotland too, and perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground here, but generally falling as rain to lower levels. Northern Scotland just holding on to those clearer skies for a time during Sunday evening, but that rain eventually pushes its way northwards through the rest of Sunday and into the start of Monday, so almost anywhere seeing a damp night to come. Further outbreaks of rain then arriving across the very far southeast, pushing northwards again into the early hours of Monday morning, so perhaps some spray on the roads here during Monday morning's rush hour, and heavy blustery showers continuing to feed in from the southwest, so generally a bit of a milder night under all of that cloud and rain. Into the start of Monday then, and low pressure very much in charge of our weather. Heavy blustery showers continue to pile in from the southwest, perhaps emerging to longer spells of rain across northern areas, and perhaps again falling as sleet and snow over any high ground. That brisk southwesterly breeze does bring us milder temperatures than we saw over the weekend. Temperatures a little above average for the time of year, so 10, perhaps 11 degrees in the south and 6 or 7 degrees further north.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, time is running out now on your chance to become our biggest ever giveaway winner. Incredible 50 grand in your bank account. It could be you that gets it, but you've got to take part, so here's how.
There's just 5 days.
Yeah, good luck to you. Still to come, with news that WH Smith is facing a crisis, is the High Street on death's door. We'll talk about that next.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
People living with obesity are people, and they deserve the right for treatment and care as much as anyone else. What we need to understand is that obesity is a chronic condition, or a disease, as some people call it. It's not a choice. And this is the bit that people really struggle with, is that people think this is a lifestyle choice and people have done this to themselves. What we now know is the science and the evidence shows us that this isn't a choice. People have genetic predispositions for living with obesity. What we need to do is be a bit more compassionate and caring to people that live with obesity and support them to make healthier choices, not actually just discriminate and tell them that they're doing something wrong when, you know, if I had asthma, for instance, you wouldn't be saying the same thing to me there. But then it's exactly the same.
Usually, if you're going for an operation of some form or other, there'll be often there is a criteria. So my mother, she had a knee operation. They wanted to make sure her blood pressure was right and all these things. This is, I mean, to hear somebody say that obesity isn't a choice just because you've got genetic predisposition to it, it's just exactly why people seem to be legitimizing being overweight. Ozempic has proved that people are overweight because they eat too much. Because Ozempic tells you to stop eating, it makes you think that you've eaten and makes you feel full, so you don't eat. You may be predisposed to anything, but you also have a large percentage of responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. So absolutely, it is in the patient's best interests, because if you're overweight, it'll take you longer to heal. You're more likely to have complications, the same if you smoke, and also the outcomes are usually better. So for a smoker, if you quit, say 4 weeks before surgery, your 25%, your risk is lower of respiratory complications. So this is literally, of course, it's discriminatory, because You have to decide, you have to prioritise the people that are likely to survive the operations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 7:22 now. WH Smith is reportedly in secret talks to sell its high street business after more than 230 years.
Yes, they are now going to shift their focus, apparently, to stores in train stations and airports.
So, does this mean the high street is really on death's door?
Let's talk to consumer and retail expert Helen Dewdney, who joins us now. Morning, Helen.
Morning.
Hi. Yeah, I mean, yet another big name is going to fall away from our high street. It seems a terrible shame, but I guess if we don't use them, we'll lose them.
Absolutely, and I think it's just another one that's going to the wall, isn't it? But we have to see who buys it and whether it stays as Smiths under another name.
I mean, that's the thing. We're sort of assuming that whoever buys it is going to do something else with it, whereas they could just continue the brand.
They could, but it'd be interesting to see because, I mean, we have seen that their profits have gone down. You know, they went cashless, which they openly said was a money-saving exercise. So whether we will see changes, you know, you've got to look at what they sell, you know, things like books, which people are buying elsewhere, and they're focusing on the travel ones where there's a limited place where you can buy things at last minute. So I'm not so sure, but I think, you know, we might see that some shops are saved and some turn into something else.
I mean, even the WH Smiths at airports aren't full. They're not teeming with people, but other stores next to them are. So, I mean, do they look a bit old-fashioned now? Have they not moved with the times? I mean, what's caused the problem?
And I think it's a bit of everything. It is the fact that people can buy so much of that stuff cheaper elsewhere. You know, the prices are still quite high in Smiths compared to other places. So I think that's a big part of it. It is interesting that they want to keep the places in travel, the shops in the travel places, because there must be something going right there. But as you say, they're not as full as others, but it could be that, as you say, that they just need to keep up with the times and make some changes. You haven't seen change in their stock for many years, for example.
I mean, we keep talking about the death of the high street. Do we just have to accept that now and realise that we need to repurpose the high street in the 21st century?
I think we've been talking about the death of the high street for some time, haven't we, for quite a few years. But you have seen in some places where they take some creativity to it and, as you say, reinvent it, then they're not on their knees. You know, it's not just about coffee shops. It's about bringing in some artists, bringing in some family fun, where there's something else to go to. So if you're going to the high street for more than just shopping, you will then go to the shops as well, bring in those voluntary organisations, bring in those art organisations, lower the rent to make voluntary organisations be part of the community. I think it's about reinventing and being creative and innovative because that's working where it's being done.
And improving parking, not, you know, making it easy for the motorist to pop to the shops.
Absolutely. In my local area, they have just undertaken a consultation to ask whether the 15-minute free parking should now be paid for. 91% of Chingford said we did not want the money put back, so we have to pay for it. But they have ignored 91% of Chingford and they're putting the charges back in. So I don't think that's going to help our high street at all.
Yeah, in my local area, the most convenient little car park that everybody uses to pop to the shops has now just got planning permission for an office block to be built on it. So we'll lose all of those easy parking spaces, which means that the local shops will lose our footfall, won't they?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you just have to wonder about these people's decisions and where they're coming from, because they're not listening to people who say, we don't want that change. You know, what's the point in consultation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Helen, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. It's fascinating because they've just done a consultation where I live, actually, because they want to bring in a tram system, which is sort of fair enough. But, I mean, how many people are going to use it? I don't know. But to pay for it, they want to reduce the number of parking places and increase the payments for the ones that we have.
But
I'm not going to get a tram.
Suffer.
Of course they will.
Businesses will suffer. You've got to make it easy for people to pop to the shops. I used to live in Stratford-upon-Avon. I don't know if it's still like this there, but there was the high street was easy parking for 15 or 20 minutes. And so, frankly, if you hovered a bit, you'd always get a space, which means you could pop in and do your very basic, very quick shopping, and then you'd be popping out again and making space for somebody else. And that worked. Yeah. All of the shops were busy. Everybody liked it. I hope it's still in practice now, but that's what they should do in more places.
Well, it makes sense. It's about not sort of trying to get your hands on direct money, but seeing, giving something away for free and then reaping the benefits of High Street, which is busy and people paying their rents.
Really lively High Street.
All the rest of it. There's no common sense in these councils these days, or anywhere, frankly, at the minute. Common sense is gone.
It has.
Anyway, it's our poll of the day today. Would you miss WH Smith on Britain's high streets if it were to go? That's our question. We'll bring the results throughout the day. Final result in Nana's show later. And if you want to take part, go to gbnews.com/poll.
Still to come, Aidan will be here with the sports news. That's next.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Aidan's here with the sports news. Have they started the Australia Open final yet?
Not yet, no. 8:30 we're going to be underway there. Alex Zverev up against Yannick Sinner. Yannick Sinner has a doping case hanging over him, which I think is going to be heard in March. And I wonder whether, given that it doesn't fall within the jurisdiction of the tennis authorities, it's out of their control. I wonder if just to save face for the sport itself, they might be hoping that Zverev...
Why is it taking so long?
I don't know. I mean, look, WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, want a 2-year ban, so it's not something that's going to be dealt with quickly, I don't think, when you're talking about punishment of that magnitude.
Because he's appealing against it.
Yes, he's appealing against. Well, yeah, no, he's challenging it. I mean, it's WADA are actually appealing the first finding, which was that it was going to be dismissed and that it was OK. But it's not a good look for the sport at all. It's been hanging over in the background, and if he wins today, that's his 3rd Grand Slam in 5. And it's natural if it happens, and obviously he denies any wrongdoing. But if it happens and he goes on and wins, but then he's later found guilty and he's banned for 2 years, it calls into question every tournament. It's natural that you're going to do that. You're going to, as a fan, as a fellow professional, you're going to ask questions. But nonetheless, he's in the final today against Alex Zverev. He's won 2 Grand Slams last year. He shared them out with Carlos Alcaraz. So he's very much he and Alcaraz are the dominant 2 in tennis at the moment. But today, up against Zverev, this is seed number 1 and 2 at the Australian Open, so it's the best 2 players at the tournament. As for Zverev, he wasn't really tested in the semi-final, was he? Because there was the truncated the match against Djokovic, because he retired after a set, and Djokovic clearly wasn't at his best. He was in great discomfort in that first set. So whether that leaves him fresh for the final, or whether it leaves him short of match practice or match hardness, we'll just have to see. But I need to mention Henry Patton in the Australian Open as well, because he was a British winner Grand Slam yesterday. Doubles alongside Harri Heliövaara of Finland, a 3-set win, and it finished at 2 o'clock in the morning. And there were critics. Who said that because it was an empty stadium at that point, and it was a quote. There were a few who stayed behind, and Henry Patton of Colchester, who's 28 years old, he said, "I want to thank everyone who stayed out here and watched us play. You guys are a little bit crazy, but I love you for it." But they delayed so long that second match. It should have been probably played straight after the women's final, which of course was yesterday and won.
Well, maybe they had the clean-up to do after Sabalenka was smashing her racket.
Oh, goodness me. I know she said she was struggling throughout the match. I'm not surprised, because Madison Keys was absolutely outstanding. And Madison Keys hadn't been to a Grand Slam final since 2017. She was one of those players who, as a kid, Anne...
That's a long time,
It is, 7 years now. So she's one of those players who was burdened by expectation. They always thought she was springing to life early on in her career. She's 30 next week, so it's come late for her. But it's absolutely wonderful. She had shoulder injuries throughout 2024, which put paid to her Wimbledon and her Australian Open campaigns. So she's fought back and she's done the business there, and congratulations to her.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Luke Littler.
Yes.
I can't believe that he lost.
Against MVG?
No, he actually beat MVG. No, because all the matches happen in one night.
Oh, right.
Over 2 or 3 days, so you're going to get 2 matches in one night. No, he actually beat Michael van Gerwen, who he beat in the final, and then lost to Stephen Bunting, who he beat in the semi-final at the Worlds. But because he lost in Bahrain last week, and he lost in Den Bosch yesterday, people are thinking, is he taking his eye off the ball? I don't think he has. No. I mean, it's the volume of tournaments. This is like, we talk about Djokovic in tennis. These are the kind of tournaments he wants to cut back on the secondary ones. But Luke Littler is right in his prime. He's 18 on Tuesday, and he wants to keep going. And every name you mention now, we've heard of. It's not just Littler.
I quite agree. It's really weird, isn't it? We wouldn't have been talking at this level about darts just a few months ago.
The same thing happened in golf, 20-odd years ago. Yes, golf was obviously a lot bigger, and the prize money was much bigger. But I remember when Tiger Woods started emerging from the shadows at the age of 17, 18, there was a quote from, I think it was Jim Furyk or one of the other contenders around him. He said, "We're all getting richer off the back of this bloke who keeps beating us."
Yeah. Yes.
And I think, although Luke Littler isn't having it his own way, he is still the standout star, and he's the reason that arenas are packed all over the place, all over Europe now, not just in the UK. Try getting a ticket for some of the. I think it's a tournament in Milton Keynes at the end of the start of February. I think it is. It's difficult to get a ticket for that,
Yeah, so he's turning all the other names into household names.
Yes, and let's face it. Look, he lost in the quarter-final and the semi-final. It's not as if he's diving out in the first round. No. He's still a stellar name, and I'm sure he'll get back to some form when the time is right in the coming weeks.
Another stellar name,
yes,
Marcus Rashford.
Yeah.
What's happening with him at the moment?
Well, look, he made it clear to Manchester United that he wanted to go, and I think, you know, sometimes just in the course of my work, you do see players here and there who just need a move. He's not old enough to be written off, and he's young enough to want to seek a challenge elsewhere because he's lost
his form, though.
He's lost his form, yeah. There are some people who say that he's taken his eye off the ball since he'd started venturing into politics, but that was some years ago now.
Yeah.
He has shown some form since then. I think it's unfair to say it's all related to that. But Arsenal apparently interested in taking him on loan. Borussia Dortmund as well. I don't think United will want to sell to a Premier League rival. I think it would suit them if he went overseas. And he's willing to take a pay cut, according to reports this morning in the Sunday Mirror, to join Barcelona. So from being on 300 grand a week, he is prepared to lower his demands to 250. That's why he hasn't had a move so far. It's less about his ability and more about the wages. Yeah. I mean, the Premier League is awash with money.
Manage on £1 million a month?
I would try. I would try, and I'm sure you two would as well.
We give it our best shot.
Yeah, we would, yeah. If not, we'll just have to pool our money and see if we can get through to the month, hand to mouth.
Crazy money, isn't it? Absolutely crackers. All right, Aidan, thank you very much indeed. We'll see you later on.
And if you are in search of a bit of holiday sun, as I think we're all dreaming of at the moment, fed up with this weather, aren't you? Here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
There's plenty of sunshine on offer for many over the next couple of days in Europe, but there is some heavy rain as well, particularly for parts of Portugal, northern Spain, northwestern parts of France, and some blustery westerly winds as well continuing throughout Monday. Further east, though, there is plenty of sunshine on offer for southern parts of Italy, Greece, Cyprus, seeing plenty of sunshine throughout Monday afternoon. Temperatures here generally in the mid to high teens, with the highest temperatures likely across Tenerife, where we'll see temperatures around 22 or 23.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
First, mate, we had lockdowns. Then we had soaring energy costs. Then we had a hike in national insurance for employers. Then we had soaring wage costs. And now the government expects people like you to monitor what people say in boozers. And if you don't, you might get sued. I bet you feel like saying cheers to them, don't you?
Look, it just looks like another war on pubs, you know. Remember, they tried to stop smoking outside as well. Luckily, they rethought that. But look, we've got everything stacked against us, Martin, and the last thing I need to do is go and get in people's conversations. At the end of the day, a pub is like an extension to your home. You know, it's a public house. Friends go to speak. Friends go to meet, unwind after work. It's none of my business what you're talking about. Any good publican, and myself included, anyone that was rude to anyone or on purpose, they want to offend people or they want to dig people out, antagonise them, of course I'm going to step in and say, behave yourself or you go. But look, how can I be on social media talking about everything, transgender, immigration, and people not be allowed to do that at the bar or do that at the table of a pub? It's ridiculous. And these ministers really do need to sort of look at this legislation and see where it could lead, because I'm not going to stop anyone speaking in my pub. Again, if they're trying to antagonise people or they're rude or trying to start trouble, they get thrown out the front door, and any publican worth their salt is going to do that as well. But we're not there to police people's conversations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 7:40, time for the papers with political commentator Lynn May and social campaigner Winston Davis. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Morning.
Lynn, what's this in the Mail Online about school uniforms?
OK, so Michael Gove has lashed out at plans to reduce the amount of branded uniform that children will have to wear because essentially Labour are saying it's too expensive. Apparently, some schools require up to 5 pieces of branded. We were talking about this a minute ago, and I had a fairly strict school uniform, and there was only really 3, if you exclude PE kits. I don't think PE kits should have to have branded uniform.
No.
You just do it for an hour or hour and a half, and that's the end of it. But you have your tie, you have your... I had my V-neck jumper, tie and blazer. That's only 3 pieces. So I think this is a bit of a non-story for Labour to seem like they're really trying to help parents, families and, you know, the cost of living. But I can't see it making a huge difference.
If you don't have uniforms, the problem is that it all becomes branded fashion wear.
Exactly.
And if you don't have the money for that, the kids get picked on. We never had the branded.
This is what I'm saying. So look, I grew up in a council house, no money, whatever. All of our branded schoolwear came from seconds. You know, so people would donate their seconds, and you'd go and get it.
Yeah.
So because when we had non-school uniform days, it was a problem.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have clothes properly to wear. So actually, I think that uniforms are a good thing because it helps you to mix in with others. The only challenge I had with that was once in PE lesson, I was putting on my socks, and the boy was like, "They're mine." And I'm like, "Oh," and that was a bit embarrassing because I was like, "No, it wasn't," and he pointed to his name on the sock.
But Michael Gove has actually said if we allow this, where we soon will see potentially less and less school uniform, it could encourage street culture. And I know you disagreed with that, but I said, you know, even where, you know, some gang culture can be involved, because students are not going to have to feel like they are being identified anymore. And a lot of, sadly, the fashion now is that sort of ski masks or that, like, hoodies. And so I think school uniform should be kept.
But it doesn't have to be branded. The point is that school can say, we in this school have a navy blue V-neck jumper, white shirt, and that's it. And you can get them from anywhere then.
Yeah.
But then we had about 3 schools that had similar, like all burgundy. How would you be able to differentiate?
Well, because you have the badge on.
Yeah, but
you
you would keep one. You would keep, but this is the thing.
We used to buy the badge and your mum had to sew it on.
Yeah, but they're saying non-branded.
Yeah.
I think that we definitely shouldn't be getting rid of uniforms because aside from the financial side of it, actually as a person, it gives you a sense of identity.
Yes, smart.
You know, it gives you a sense of like, okay, I'm going to school now. It sets
standards.
It sets a standard.
You don't have to fluff about in the morning as well. You just know what you're wearing.
There have been countless studies done that say that the kids are better off with their uniform.
I mean, America doesn't have a uniform, but
no, but look at American schools. Honestly, would you want to go to an American school?
But this is it.
They're terrifying.
But this is it. Look at the crime rate in America. Look at the murder rate in America. If we don't. I don't think we should look into America for ideas on how to raise our children.
I definitely think keep uniform. I think it's smart. I think also it closes that divide. If a family has a bit more money and can buy fancy clothes and another family doesn't, you can't tell the difference. We're all one when we're in school, you know?
No, I agree, absolutely.
OK, Winston, Sunday Mirror, you've been looking at Secret Service recruiting gamers. Because, I guess because they know their tech.
So, yeah, they're saying that they are wanting to recruit youngsters that are spending their time reading up on cybersecurity, ethical hacking and coding. And they get to go on a programme with the Secret Service, and after 18 months, the best of them will go into actual, like, full-time, long-term employment.
And this is GCHQ. This is the real biz.
This is the real one. I mean, the only thing is Keir Starmer was giving a speech the other day, and he was saying we're going to come after the misfits and loners that are the threat to our society, and surely these potentially are the same. Potentially, it's from the same pool of misfits and loners that are sitting in their rooms, because it's more and more.
It's a bit risky, isn't it?
But well, this is what I'm saying.
Isn't that? How would you do a background check on someone so young as well? If you are radicalised or you are very. The sort that Keir Starmer
I don't think it's a bad thing. Sorry, you don't get me wrong. I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, actually, look. Rather than these misfits and loners being taken on a negative way. Well, actually, let's put it something positive. You know, if they've got aspirations to look at cybercrime, which is the biggest, one of the biggest threats to us now. You've got that ransomware attack on the NHS supplier recently, which affected us as a nation and the individuals that are using the NHS. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm not saying
you've got to get the geeks involved.
Yeah, I was going to say, just because I mean, there are lots of kids, young people, who are mad keen on gaming. They would call themselves gamers.
Yeah.
Some of them are professional and fortunate
very
doing it,
good.
don't they? They wouldn't want to be called misfits or loners necessarily.
But that was a terminology used by.
Yeah, but he didn't mean these people, did he?
We don't know. How would we know? How would you be able to differentiate that there's a thin line of somebody who isn't very socially, you know, adaptable or...
Doesn't that come back down to parenting, then? If you've got a child who's locking themselves away in their bedroom for hours and hours a day gaming, that's different from having the gaming console downstairs and still spending hours on it.
I know, but a lot of them are very addicted now. They'll spend with all their friends hours in a room, and then a lot of them do have that inability to have normality with social interactions.
Yeah, have a
well, that's
conversation.
parenting then, isn't it? You
True.
stop them spending hours and hours alone.
I think
as they get older, it's more difficult.
Yes, of course.
Yes,
And as a father of teenage sons, it's much more difficult. And these companies, they actually use, science to keep them more addicted. You know, in America, there's a company called the Dopamine Lab that literally works on the neurological and chemical balances of our children to keep them more addicted. So that's a bigger fight.
I think it is much harder nowadays.
How we switch from that to King Charles in a kilt, I don't know, but it's on the Sunday Express.
That night, wasn't it?
Well, the image was taken in the library of Royal Family's Scottish holiday home in Aberdeenshire in the autumn, and this was for Burns Night. And I actually think this is a good thing. It might be a bit of a non-story, like, you know, most of us in England or Wales may not really care, but I think Scotland often do feel forgotten, and they always have that conversation of, you know, should we go it alone, should we break off? And I think it's good to see the royal family still have a little bit of connection and visuals to Scotland.
Of course, plus it's his own tartan.
Yeah.
It's the King Charles III tartan based on the Balmoral tartan set.
Yes,
which is,
very smart.
A couple of 100 years old. Oh, that's great.
Would you wear a kilt?
Yeah, I'd love to wear a kilt.
One of my sons very proud of his Scottish heritage because we are Scots. And he's looked up the tartan and he's had a kilt made in the tartan.
I don't know if it's an inappropriate question. Do you wear anything under?
You're not meant to.
OK.
I think nowadays you do.
Boxers? Y fronts?
The last time I went to an event, which is an army event, and someone was in his kilt, he made sure everybody in the room knew he had nothing on.
Oh, OK.
But would you ask when you next bump into King Charles, you have to ask him?
I think I'll pass on that. I think I'll pass
He'd
on
have
that
something to say on that.
He would. He'd probably be quite amused.
I wouldn't. If I had a kilt on, I wouldn't wear anything under it.
No?
I think No, I think
you'd feel more empowered.
I think you'd
it's
have
all
to.
breezy
because it's what everyone talks about, I think you'd have to go, no, I'm not going to.
I would put money that Stephen wouldn't wear.
Tartan Y fronts.
Would I wear? I think I'd have to. I couldn't.
Yeah. No, it would just be...
I wouldn't want to get arrested.
See, a real kilt, though, is made from very heavy material.
Yeah.
But a man looks really good in a kilt.
It's great. I love a kilt. Love a kilt. What about a tan? A fake tan, Winston?
They're saying...
I suppose it's the latest thing now.
Oh, don't. They're saying, I think since Trump's, come into power or getting into the forefront of people, fake tan has gone up 32%. From £700 million market to 900 million.
I don't think you can say it's out of Trump.
I mean, that's what they're saying. I mean, I was looking at it, saying, what is it saying? Yeah, there's a skin care brand saying that a deep tan speaks to your ability to be away on holiday for a long time. That might...
Trump never does his eyes or his mouth, though.
No.
It really annoys me.
I know.
Can no one tell him?
But it's a bit like his hair, isn't it? You think, why doesn't he just do it better?
Yeah, well, when we can't really speak when we had someone like Boris, can we?
No, but maybe it's Trump's trademark. I don't know if Trump has a tan or whether it's
and he's
makeup.
always
I don't
pouting
know.
with the pale lips.
But I still don't buy this thing about, obviously we know in this country, because we're so gloomy here, everyone, if you've got a tan, it's a sign of, so money and whatever. But there's many countries in the world where having a tan's a bad thing. They want to be lighter, they wear you go to a hot country and you see Far Eastern people with umbrellas.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to get a tan. So
no one's ever happy, are they? But I'd rather people get a bottle of, I don't know, orange fake tan than the sunbeds, because, if you actually use sunbeds, it can increase skin cancer. So I'm happy that we're... I'm glad that we are moving away from that.
Yes.
I just think with the whole Trump thing, I just think he's got. Well, I'm sure he probably does. You've got to embrace it. I think it's become a bit of a trademark.
Just like his dance.
The whole look. Yeah, and why not embrace it? It's how people recognise
His dance was funny as well.
I quite like it.
First of all, I thought, this is embarrassing. And I thought, no.
Did you see it with the sword as well? He did it with the sword. Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
You've got to go.
Enjoying the moment.
You've got to go with these quirks. It's like Boris with his hair. Boris used to get his hair cut and styled, and he'd immediately just run his hair.
You'd see him quickly go like that.
Yeah, makeup ladies were getting him ready for a studio appearance or something. They would comb his hair and they'd get it looking nice, and then he'd immediately just go for it and mess it up again, because that's what he liked.
People liked it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, fair play to both of them. You've got to have your own style.
True, very true.
All about image now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, should we talk about robots that come from the shop at you?
Oh, yes, because it's in the papers. I don't understand why it's in the papers. Is it?
Yeah, they're saying that...
This is the Co-op.
Yeah, the Co-op.
Which is now going to deliver to you by robot.
Yeah, and
now, where Stephen lives, this already happens.
It's been happening for years.
But that's what I'm saying, is how's his story today?
Have they got a picture then?
Yeah.
They've got this... Wherever that is, if that's on there.
Yeah, we're getting that.
So it just makes its way down streets.
Yeah, they're like little
house.
They look like little fridges on wheels, and they've got a little flag hanging out.
99p delivery.
Yeah, and they negotiate the roads. They stop at the curb and wait. They do their green cross.
Is this not in London or Essex or anything? I've not seen any of them.
Yeah, well, maybe it would be more problematic in a place like London with
too
footfall
much,
and really too many people about.
Them.
But yeah, you order online. You order on the app. Whatever you want, and then someone in the Co-op goes around, picks it up for you, puts it in a bag, shoves it in the robot trundles off, and 20 minutes later it's at your house.
Well, we're going to see less Deliveroo cyclists now, aren't we?
Well, potentially, yeah. I mean, to be fair, just looking at it, this is 20 years ago, the actual technology and the business of this got sold for $2 billion.
Wow.
So 20 years later, it's now becoming, mainstream. So I accept then that's why it's got to the papers today. So now they're going, right, we've been developing this 20 years, we're now ready to roll it out. I mean, my only thing concerned about that would be then, if we see an unidentified shopping thing going down the street, how do we know there's not a bomb in it?
How do you know there's not a bomb in it?
Yeah.
How do you know there's not a bomb in anything?
Well, yeah, because you don't leave unidentified packages lying around.
Yeah, but it's not an unidentified package. It's
monitored.
Tracked.
Yeah,
it's tracked. It drives to your front door, and you have a code. Only you can open it.
Yeah. And someone wants to put a bomb in something and make it look like one of these things and sends it off somewhere.
God, I think that's taking it a bit too far.
You've been watching too many movies.
Yeah, you have.
No,
you have.
I'm not sure about that.
You have. But they're great. I mean, they started round us during lockdown, and it was a godsend during lockdown.
Is it only the Co-op doing it?
No, well, it's not. The company's called Starship, and so they can... I mean, where I live, the Co-op use it quite a lot, but also some of the takeaways use it. And so you have to... Those companies would have to pay a subscription to Starship, and then you order via their website.
How far does it go? Like 1 mile?
A couple of miles. I'll go a couple of miles, yeah.
Ooh.
I mean, it's quite something. I mean, when I'm at home... and driving about, and you do see these little things going all over. The dog loves them.
I was going to say, do children sort of just sit on them and have a ride?
No, I've never seen that.
It would probably
it's just on the pavement.
Yeah, it would probably stop, wouldn't it, and set it off.
Yeah, it probably would. But I think they're great. I think it's a really nice way of seeing technology in action. And if you're someone perhaps who's elderly, and you can't get to the shops, you need a loaf of bread.
Things to come, isn't it, really?
I think we're going to see drones overtake this.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. They have in China already, haven't they?
I think the drones are more likely to be successful long term.
Yeah. All right, you two. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Here's the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. A dry start for many of us, but a cloudy start too, and there is some rain on its way, spreading in from the southwest as we go through the rest of this afternoon. So a damp start for Devon and Cornwall and into South Wales this morning. That area of rain pushing its way north and eastwards as we head towards Sunday afternoon. There will be some sunshine across the very far north of Scotland, but that heavy rain arriving across Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England and eastern parts of England by Sunday afternoon. Heavy blustery showers feeding in quite closely behind, but perhaps a little bit milder across the very far southwest. Temperatures here 10 or 11 degrees, but generally around average elsewhere. As we then go into Sunday evening, those heavy and blustery showers continue to feed in from the southwest. These perhaps merging to longer spells of rain at times, although there will be some breaks in those showers as we head through Sunday evening. Longer spells of rain likely, though, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, into southern parts of Scotland too, and perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground here, but generally falling as rain to lower levels. Northern Scotland just holding on to those clearer skies for a time during Sunday evening, but that rain eventually pushes its way northwards through the rest of Sunday and into the start of Monday, so almost anywhere seeing a damp night to come. Further outbreaks of rain then arriving across the very far southeast, pushing northwards again into the early hours of Monday morning, so perhaps some spray on the roads here during Monday morning's rush hour, and heavy blustery showers continuing to feed in from the southwest, so generally a bit of a milder night under all of that cloud and rain. Into the start of Monday then, and low pressure very much in charge of our weather. Heavy blustery showers continue to pile in from the southwest, perhaps emerging to longer spells of rain across northern areas, and perhaps again falling as sleet and snow over any high ground. That brisk southwesterly breeze does bring us milder temperatures than we saw over the weekend. Temperatures a little above average for the time of year, so 10, perhaps 11 degrees in the south and 6 or 7 degrees further north.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the Good Luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Lately, it's getting much better. The people getting more educated in terms of overall well-being of the skin health rather than temporary aesthetic treatments. Because most of the treatments in aesthetic, it doesn't change the texture of the skin. It just gives like volumetric result or remove the wrinkles temporarily.
So what are the most popular treatments that people are after?
According to a statistic report, first is anti-wrinkle, then dermal filler, then energy-based device. Yeah. But lately, biostimulators also became very popular. And
what do you mean by biostimulators?
Biosimulator, any substance that can change the texture of the skin, or like it will lead to postpone the aging process, or proliferate more collagen, increase the elasticity of the skin, such as polynucleotide or exosome, or different vitamins and minerals in the form of mesotherapy considered as a biostimulator.
Turkey's a particularly popular destination because the costs are so much lower. There have also been a lot of horror stories about what can happen when things go wrong, even people dying from post-surgery complications. What would you advise people?
Choose as a practitioner or surgeon very carefully and never prioritize price over quality. This is your face after all, your body after all. And mistakes can be reversible. It can be irreversible, and sometimes it's not like a booking restaurant or hotel. It's a sensitive matter that can affect their confidence and skin and body for life. Yeah. So they need to choose very wisely. They need to search what kind of methodology that particular surgeon they perform the treatments. Are they using any safety tools?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning. More fatal errors revealed in the Southport killings.
Counter-terrorism officers failed to recognise that Axel Rudakabana was in danger of being radicalised. They believed that his fixation with massacres was just an obsession with world news.
Well, the Home Secretary will now look into changing the referral threshold for PREVENT, the government's counter-terrorism scheme.
Hamas has warned of repercussions if they say Israel continues to block displaced Palestinians from returning to northern Gaza. That's as 4 Israeli hostages were released yesterday.
Now, could replacing medication with therapy help cut down the use of antidepressants? We're debating that later this hour.
And finally, Scarborough fishermen worry their harbour will become a tourist trap as councillors plan a multi-million-pound rejuvenation scheme.
A perfect performance. That's how Liverpool head coach Arne Slot described his side's display as they moved 6 points clear at the top of the Premier League. And in tennis, we're less than 30 minutes away from the start of the men's Australian Open final with champion Jannik Sinner taking on Alexander Zverev in Melbourne.
After a dry and sunny day for many of us yesterday, there's further wet weather on the way through the rest of today. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
It's just gone 8 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
The whole uniform thing's got you going this morning. School uniforms, you mentioned it in the papers. Michael Gove wants to make sure that we all wear school uniforms. A lot of support for it. Though John has said we need to start drumming into kids about patriotism and singing the national anthem every morning. I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, I don't either. I like what the Americans do. They do that right anyway, don't they? They pledge their allegiance to the flag. I think most schools do every morning, and they know their national anthem.
Can't be the only country who do that either, can they?
No,
they won't be.
Yeah.
They won't be, but someone's replied by that saying, with this government, if you flied the Union flag, they'd send the police around. Well, I mean, they wouldn't, but I mean,
you do get that feeling.
You do.
I mean, you're encouraged to be ashamed. Was it Oasis? Who's the band that did a gig last night in India and apologised?
Coldplay.
Coldplay. It was
Steve Martin, yeah.
Yeah. They did a gig.
Chris Martin. Chris Martin.
They apologised for being British.
They were playing on Patrick Christie's programme, I think, last night, weren't they?
Yeah, he was saying...
The clip was, they said they were playing in India somewhere, and they said, thank you very much for a wonderful reception. We almost didn't expect it, and they sort of apologised for being British.
Thanks for welcoming us despite being British.
Yeah, that's right.
No. I mean, that's a disgrace.
Yes, it is.
I mean, that's absolutely terrible. Why can't we be proud to be British?
It's becoming the norm to feel that you have to apologise all the time for being British, and I think that's wrong.
I think Bono did it about 20, 30 years ago when he was touring with U2, didn't he?
Well, stop it. Let's be proud.
He sang a song.
We've got a lot to be proud of in this country, and it's wrong to make it, and especially if and it probably is filtering down to our children.
Yeah.
This feeling that you've got to apologise for being British, for heaven's sake.
Well, it's back to that old image, isn't it, of an England flag being viewed, someone flying an England flag, and you sort of tut and raise your eyebrows at it, which is just so wrong. You don't get that with any other flag, do you? That we're just meant to be embarrassed by it all.
Yeah, we've got to stop that. We really have.
Yeah, being British. Wouldn't want to be anything else. Thanks very much indeed.
I like being British.
Anyway, I'm sure you'll have thoughts on that. Right, our main news today. New details have emerged about the Home Office missing quite a number of opportunities, actually, to identify the Southport killer, Axel Rudakabana, as a terror threat.
Yes, it's all over the front page of the Sunday Times today. And the Sunday Times are claiming that a review, which they've seen, has found that Rudakabana was referred to an anti-extremism programme 3 times.
It's also revealed his obsession with mass shootings was dismissed by counter-terror officers as an interest in world news, and he wasn't in danger of being radicalised.
Well, earlier on we spoke to political correspondent for The Spectator, James Heal.
Cooper, the Home Secretary, is very much leaning into this and saying that multiple layers of the state have failed in all of this.
We know from interviews that were given after the sentencing that there were these various sort of conferences held between different agencies about him, and we were told with confidence that these conferences had taken place, but not what the outcome of any of it was.
Yes, and I think that's going to be one of the things that finds out. I mean, there's so many different strands to it, which is quite interesting, one of which is about him potentially having, I think it was an autism diagnosis, and actually Yvette Cooper is now saying that it needs to be looked at in terms of neurodivergent cases, etc. Does that inhibit discussion around this? People often get things dismissed, etc., and therefore are those red flags being overlooked? And many of the different authorities were involved, mental health services, police, etc., and of course 3 times Brent looked at it in 2019 and 2 separate cases in 2021. All these things are going to come out in the inquiry, but it certainly seems that it doesn't seem a great case again in which one case can slip through the cracks of our different different systems.
It's interesting, though, you say one case. It's very clear from reading almost in between the lines of this report that the counter-terrorism officers and various other agencies that became involved don't just come across this once in a blue moon. There are a lot of people who fall into this criteria. Young men, particularly, who are obsessed with violence and knives and the school shootings thing and researching things on the internet that are, frankly, really bad for anyone to look into.
Absolutely, and there's stories in other papers today, including The Sun on Sunday, which is talking about how Yvette Cooper and the Science Secretary, Peter Kyle, are demanding that content about the Southport cases be removed online. And some of the tech giants, which are some of the issues, obviously, we've seen in terms of America, recent coverage, etc., have been unwilling, it seems, to take some of that content down from online. And, of course, that then makes it a real issue for the authorities, because some of this stuff can be flagged in offline situations, in person, etc. But a lot of it's happening online, away from everything. And it then gets into difficult issues, such as when he's ordering rice into his next-door neighbour.
Well, at least there is going to be an inquiry, which is a positive thing, and hopefully it can get to the bottom of this, because the idea that someone could be referred multiple times to something like Prevent and
even referred by his own parents. They were asking for help with him. There were so many red flags. And we would believe, wouldn't we, always, that the various different agencies, the police, the counter-terrorism officers, were linking up on this, but it didn't appear to do any good.
No, it's really concerning.
And it's just so terrible that an awful killing, such as the one that happened, is the only way that we point up the failings of an agency that we all believed were the experts at the job.
See, this is the thing. Why is it that it takes a catastrophic failure? Why are these things not being monitored more closely, reviewed constantly to make sure they're doing what they're meant to be doing? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just the way of the world, but it's just such a disgrace. But as I say, we've got an inquiry. Maybe that will help in the long term.
If you were the parents or any of the families involved in that terrible, terrible scenario, you would... How do you get closure at all on anything like that when there clearly was such a terrible injustice?
And nothing will help.
But the
whatever
authorities
the
that should have been helping didn't. Anyway, it's terrible, terrible business. 8 minutes past 8. Now, Israel has prevented, apparently, thousands of displaced Palestinians from returning home to northern Gaza. They accused Hamas of breaching the ceasefire deal.
Well, it comes as 4 female Israeli soldiers were released by Hamas yesterday and reunited with their families. They've been held in Gaza for 15 months.
Former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Ellwood, joins us now. A very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. What are your thoughts thus far? It seems that this so-called ceasefire, hopefully it is, but it seems very, very fragile.
Absolutely right. We're in phase 1 of this ceasefire. It continues to hold. We seem to be getting better at these exchanges, but you're right to flag up the fact that there was one individual, a civilian, that was expected to be on the list that wasn't. That's caused some friction between Hamas and Israel. I hope that we can get through this. But ultimately, we're seeing more hostages finally get home after that terrible ordeal in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Talks continue to be finalised of the next stage of Israel's withdrawal from Gaza. But I would point out that there's a wider, serious situation across the Middle East that we need to be aware of. It's very volatile indeed. This Gaza ceasefire is still without a long-term plan, how Gaza will be governed in the longer term. There's no plan on how to reconstruct the Gaza Strip. We're seeing violence break out in the West Bank. And we're also seeing the Lebanon ceasefire far from stable. Indeed, Israel is now refusing to pull its troops out of there. And wider afield, Assad may have gone in Syria, but another civil war could break out there because the stakeholders there cannot agree a direction forward. And Iran's proxy influence may have been reduced, but ultimately its nuclear program is much further advanced than when President Trump was last in office. So there's still much to keep us awake at night. But it's good to see hostages finally coming home.
Yeah, there is some positive news in all of this. Tobias Ellwood, we're going to leave it there just because your line keeps breaking up. But thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it does show how tense the situation still is it is a ceasefire and it is holding, but, you know, week by week you can sense that tensions are going to rise and fall.
What is worrying with this, and Robert Fox was saying earlier on, that this particular civilian, they think she's probably a civilian, who Israel was expecting to be released, seems to be held by Islamic Jihad in Gaza. Which
is why they haven't been able to
sort of
reach her.
So they don't. It's a case of what is happening in Gaza is very fractured in itself, and that coordination there isn't there. So it's why it's taking. Robert was saying this initial 6-week period to get 33 people out isn't just phased. For the sake of it, it's phased because they've got to locate these people and try and persuade the people who are holding them to get them out. It's a very complicated process.
And also this accusation that they are preventing Palestinian people from getting back into northern Gaza. I mean, there may be lots of reasons for that. One being that it's unsafe there. I mean, there's no infrastructure there. There's nothing.
Well, as Tobias was saying, the problem you've got with Northern... I mean, on a longer-term solution with this is what do you do there? How do you rebuild it? It would cost trillions upon trillions of dollars. And where does that money come from?
But just to let people back in there would be chaotic and dangerous, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's...
No easy answer to this.
No, of course there isn't.
But the positive side is that we are seeing these people coming home slowly, at the moment, but I mean those 4 girls yesterday, all looking pretty well, has to be said, is a really good thing. So let's hope it continues week by week on that footing.
Talking about being proud to be British or not proud to be British, as we learned Coldplay wasn't. I've been corrected. It was on Ben Leo's show last night. He showed the video of Coldplay saying that. Thank you very much for welcoming us in India so much, especially despite the fact that we're British. It was almost like an apology for being British. Debbie's been in touch already this morning saying, I'm proud to be British, and they're proud to be British in Sri Lanka. I'm on holiday here now, and they love the British.
Yes.
So let's get a perspective on it.
Yeah, quite right too. We're British and proud.
Yeah.
It's the way to be. I don't know why there is this obsession to make us feel bad about being British.
Yeah.
It's a terrible thing. It's a really odd hangover from something, but I don't know what. Right, should we have a look at Scarborough? I love Scarborough. Well, I've got very fond memories of Scarborough. I've not been there for a long time. Fishermen in Scarborough have condemned plans to mix tourism with the fishing industry in the town's harbour.
Apparently, the fishermen believe that the harbour should be used exclusively for them to do their job.
Yeah, but North Yorkshire councillors are considering a multi-million-pound project on the West Pier to make it, well, all focus on the tourists. Anna Riley has the story.
Scarborough Harbour. It's been here since the 13th century and now lands shellfish, but it's in need of repair. The council plan to renovate buildings along the pier at the same time as making it a destination for hospitality, leisure and events. For fisherman Fred Normandale, this is a land grab only benefiting tourists.
There's nothing wrong with bringing visitors around the harbour, it's great, but not to the exclusion of industry. If we lose that pier, then we lose the fishing industry and we'll lose the next opportunities for the harbour. We've got to keep moving forward, whether it's fishing, tourism, oil. The harbour needs work, the harbour needs using. And if they take it for tourism, it'll be the end of what would be the next adventure for Scarborough Harbour.
With the right facilities, fishermen here believe the harbour and their industry could support the renewables sector. Vessels servicing the world's largest wind farm nearby could use the port, as well as those working on the carbon capture project in Teesside.
Scarborough and Whitby are the 2 nearest ports to the Dogger Bank. It's not that far to the Rough Gas Field, it's 40 miles southeast. If it brings vessels, it brings crew. If it brings crew, it brings accommodation. If it brings vessels, it brings servicing. It brings fuel, it brings joiners, it brings shipwrights. And all that's gone. We've lost all our infrastructure here. We used to have joiners, blacksmiths, we had engineers. And it's gone because the infrastructure's failed.
Fisherman Bob Roberts believes current plans would destroy Scarborough's maritime legacy.
The fishing industry has survived here for centuries and was the basis on which the town was built. It's really the beating heart of the town. down here. It's one of the few communities left that reveres their heritage, you know. It's important that that's preserved.
North Yorkshire Council say the proposals would dramatically improve facilities for the local fishing industry, staff and visitors to the pier. Anna Riley, GB News.
It looks lovely, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
No, they do
Fancy a trip up there.
Yeah, I hope they do spend some money on that area. That would be lovely. But I can't understand why they can't have both tourists and fishermen doing their job.
Yeah, you can't get rid of the pier, a working pier, and turn it into a tourist attraction. I thought what Fred was saying in that report was very good. He was right. Get people round the harbour, but to see people work in it, quite right too.
Lovely.
Now, do you fancy £50,000? Because if you do, the clock is ticking. There's only 5 days left to get your entry in. Here's how you do it.
Very good luck. Just think how you could spend that money, maybe on a wonderful holiday or something like that, to get away from the British weather at the moment. That's the only thing I am a bit fed up with about Britain. We've got it bad at the moment, haven't we? Here's Ellie Glazer with the latest weather forecast for you.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed Heat Pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. A dry start for many of us, but a cloudy start too, and there is some rain on its way, spreading in from the southwest as we go through the rest of this afternoon. So a damp start for Devon and Cornwall and into South Wales this morning. That area of rain pushing its way north and eastwards as we head towards Sunday afternoon. There will be some sunshine across the very far north of Scotland, but that heavy rain arriving across Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England and eastern parts of England by Sunday afternoon. Heavy blustery showers feeding in quite closely behind, but perhaps a little bit milder across the very far southwest. Temperatures here 10 or 11 degrees, but generally around average elsewhere. As we then go into Sunday evening, those heavy and blustery showers continue to feed in from the southwest. These perhaps merging to longer spells of rain at times, although there will be some breaks in those showers as we head through Sunday evening. Longer spells of rain likely, though, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, into southern parts of Scotland too, and perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground here, but generally falling as rain to lower levels. Northern Scotland just holding on to those clearer skies for a time during Sunday evening, but that rain eventually pushes its way northwards through the rest of Sunday and into the start of Monday, so almost anywhere seeing a damp night to come. Further outbreaks of rain then arriving across the very far southeast, pushing northwards again into the early hours of Monday morning, so perhaps some spray on the roads here during Monday morning's rush hour, and heavy blustery showers continuing to feed in from the southwest, so generally a bit of a milder night under all of that cloud and rain. Into the start of Monday then, and low pressure very much in charge of our weather. Heavy blustery showers continue to pile in from the southwest, perhaps emerging to longer spells of rain across northern areas, and perhaps again falling as sleet and snow over any high ground. That brisk southwesterly breeze does bring us milder temperatures than we saw over the weekend. Temperatures a little above average for the time of year, so 10, perhaps 11 degrees in the south and 6 or 7 degrees further north.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed Heat Pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Do stay with us, because still to come we're asking, should people rely less on antidepressants, and maybe could therapy be the answer? Apparently that's an idea being put forward. We'll be debating it next.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
We've got the Daily Mail now with the latest in the court case over whether a man is a woman or a man. It's a tough question, and J.K. Rowling has given her opinion. I think I can guess what it is, Cressida.
Explosive twist in Australia's What is a Woman trans battle as Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling gets involved. So this is the court case Giggle versus Tickle. Tickle was a...
He's Mr. Men.
That's right. It's a Mr. Men trans battle.
Kind of is a Mr. Man.
It was a women's group, wasn't it? Tickle, Giggles... Oh, I get it wrong. Giggles for girls. And Roxy Tickle, who is a trans woman, wanted to join this group and wasn't allowed, was banned for being a biological male, and then sued and amazingly got $10,000 for this, which is already extraordinary to me.
Yeah.
But it's now doubling down and is going to file a cross appeal seeking to upgrade the judgment.
Yeah.
So Roxy has come back for another bite of the cherry.
And I've had a look at this Roxanne Tickle, the trans woman.
Pretty?
No, not one of the pretty ones. Not a Blair White. Just looks like, to be honest, it looks like
you could be sued for 10,000.
Looks like one of us.
Yeah.
To be honest, no. Like I mean, I'll happily.
For yourself.
No, I think it's an absolute. It's a farce, and it's making a mockery of not just. It's not just making a mockery of women's right to have their own spaces. It's making a mockery of genuine trans people who actually put some effort in and look like a woman.
What do you mean a genuine trans
And also,
people?
if
We don't believe in that.
If your name was Roxanne, if you were going to transition, you wouldn't pick the name Roxanne Tickle. You choose Tess.
Tess. That's a kind of name. No, the truth is, that's one of the problems, is you get a choice in the name you're going to choose. And of course, you're going to choose like a hot Roxanne. That's a hot Roxanne. That's a great name. They're not going to choose.
You don't think
Louis.
Tess would work better with Tickle?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
It's 8:24 now. The Labour MP, he's a doctor as well, Simon Ofer, has proposed that therapists should be recruited to GP surgeries in a bid to cut the use of antidepressants.
He believes that doctors at the moment don't really have a choice but to prescribe antidepressants.
So, we're asking today, is it time we rely less on the little pills and more on talking therapy?
Joining us now, trauma therapist Sally Baker and Vice Chair of the National Pharmacy Association, Olivier Picard. A very good morning to both of you. Right, where do we start? I suppose the presumption here is that... Sally, I'll put this to you. The presumption here is that there's no other recourse for GPs than to write a prescription for antidepressants.
I think that's the accepted wisdom, that GPs are under immense pressure. People are coming to them with complex and profound needs, and it's not a pill won't fix everyone, and the prescribing model has changed in as much as people used to be prescribed antidepressants for a period of time to lift them out of depression enough so they could access counselling. That part of the service has such long lead-in times now, it's almost disappeared for many people. So they're just left with pharmacology. That's been the problem.
What's your take on this, Olivier?
Yeah, I mean, this is correct. 1 in 5 people will take 5 or more medications, and prescriptions are often issued when actually alternative therapies could be considered. In pharmacy, we have access to medicines. We know the medicines, and we could do medicines reviews. We could do medication reviews that would help with that. But there's also an element of it which comes from the patient, changing in lifestyle. Talking therapies are important and often helps, if not to stop medication being prescribed, maybe to be deprescribed when patients are stable on medication. And indeed, the network needs support in order for that to happen.
I suppose the ideal, Sally, isn't it, is to have access to both. And depending on what your GP thinks, as I said, I have access to both. But who on earth is going to be able to afford for there to be a therapist available to every GP surgery?
Well, even the suggestions are fairly modest. A therapist in a doctor's surgery seeing 10 to 15 patients in a day could be as little as 30 minutes a day. But compared to nothing, currently it's a desert. So, for people to have access to the gold standard, which is eye-to-eye contact, sitting in a room, having someone hear you, bear witness is part of the recovery. So, that's what we want for people, but how it's going to get funded. I can remember back in the day when you used to be able to book a double session with a doctor because it was a mental health issue you were going to instead of a physical issue. And he or she would sit and listen to you. And then she or he would, signpost you onto other services. But those other services currently are completely beleaguered or non-existent. So my colleague here is right. We need the whole panoply, the whole setup, the structure needs to be improved.
My concern here, Olivier, would be that because you can't make assumptions with any of this, and there does seem to be an assumption being made by some that we're talking about depression purely as a mental health issue and not as a physiological issue, which of course it can be.
Yeah, and this is what I was saying, a holistic approach is important. And I have no doubt that medication will be the right treatment for many people. However, as explained, lifestyle changes, regular medication review, patient education as part of the whole system is important. Pharmacies are well placed to do that, and our funding has suffered in recent years, which means that we are also immensely stretched and limited with what we can do. And the NHS need to invest not just in GP surgeries, but in community pharmacies so that we can work together, be connected and benefit the patient. And as I said, the problem is not necessarily that we are prescribing too much or our colleague GPs are prescribing too much. It's the support that's given to those patients. And in the case of the antidepressant, when someone is started on the medication, it's sometimes difficult to come off those medications. There is a long process. There can be side effects, and the patient will need support. And pharmacies will be well placed, as well as some element be done in a GP surgery. And I think the NHS should look at that in a more sort of wider part to involve all parts of the health sector.
I guess what we're talking about here, if this is, as you say, a mental health issue, or at least a depression issue, is that it's still going to be the poor cousin of the rest of the NHS. We can't afford most of the treatments we want on the NHS for physical complaints. Here's a mental health problem that is, if we were to want the gold standard, we simply wouldn't be able to afford it, Sally.
No, but for instance, the Wanstead Mental Health Clinic is a good model. Group therapy sessions around certain topics. We've got survivors of childhood trauma, adverse conditions. Of men's groups can happen there. There can be a drop-in, a walk-in, and then there can be scheduled sessions as well. So it's the idea that you can offer therapy on lots of different levels in lots of different shapes too. It's not unusual for me to see clients in my private practice who've been on medication, antidepressants for 15, 17 years. It's not unusual. So although that takes the bottom edge off their level of depression, often for people it steals their ability to feel joy. So they're left in this sort of grey netherland.
And that's awful, isn't it? Do you find that, Olivier, that people, once they've started on antidepressants, because there isn't access to therapy, they just stay on them for years and years and years and years?
And worse than that, patients are coming to my pharmacy and they are asking me, how can I come off this medication? I'd like to stop. But the support is not there. And when we start talking about lifestyle, about patient education, this will go a certain way, but it will not be the answer for everyone and everything. And I think the lack of support for patient is part of the problem. So currently, pharmacy are well placed to offer advice, but we're not able to change patient treatment or even refer patients into a wider part of the health service. So the NHS has opportunities in involving everyone so that we can support patients better and help them come off their medication, especially when they are asking to do so.
OK. Sally, Olivier, good to talk to you both. Thank you very much indeed. If you've got any thoughts on that, gbnews.com/your say. Let's remember what it is then. The MP, Danny Kruger, worked on all of this, apparently, on this report. He's going to be on Camilla's show later this morning. I'm always I have an issue with people who, when antidepressants become the villain of the piece, because I think they're so important for a lot of people. And
Yes,
you can't.
I know.
And for some people, you don't want to come off them.
No,
you would never want to come
for
off
some
them.
people, they do really work. But I think having access to either.
Well, I mean, that's
is
the ideal.
But when is the NHS ever going to be able to cough up the ideal in most situations?
Yeah. Yeah. Mary's got a point. She says, is the therapist you've just had on, Sally, is she talking about people with real issues? Well, yes, she was. Not people unable to cope with life. But maybe that's a real issue as well, rather than just a trauma, specific trauma.
You can't just dismiss it, can you? That's the point. If people are unable to cope with life, you have to find out why and if they can be helped.
Vernon's got a point. I mean, I'm not saying this wouldn't work for everyone, Vernon, but I think a lot of people who are very lonely in society at the moment. He says, get down the pub or a cafe and start talking to anyone. Someone's always there for a chat. And I think there's a lot to be said for talking to family, friends, or, people you meet down the pub or what have you. Particularly for men. All the stuff that used to be said down the pub when men used to go to the pub on their own, and the stuff when I worked behind the bar, some of the stuff that used to come out. But it is how people get it off their chest.
Yes, it is, yeah. That's why that shed movement is working very well.
Yeah, the shed.
I hope it's still working very well. If you're a member of a shed movement where men meet in sheds and talk man stuff in sheds.
Yeah.
I don't think they often do a lot of work, but, they open the fridge and that's a sort of homemade pub. And people... I used to live in a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, it's really good idea.
I used to live in a cul-de-sac and all, all the houses had garages. And every evening, the garages would all be open. And the men would all visit each other in the garage and they'd sort of pretend to be working or doing something or helping each other out with some sort of job around the house. But actually, they were just standing and talking and it was good for them.
Yeah.
And actually, I mean, this sounds very old-fashioned, but the wives sort of quite liked that too.
Yeah, of course.
Got the men out the house, into the garage, talking together. And they knew it was good for them.
There's a lot to be said for the old-fashioned stuff. The coffee mornings and all that sort of thing. It's just the getting together. If you are a fella who would like someone to talk to, menssheds.org.uk.
Brilliant idea.
I think it's really clever, and you don't have to just go and talk about big issues. You can just go and talk about the sport or whatever you want, and it's just having that company and that connection. I think it's really
I
important.
don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging the fact that men like men's company sometimes.
No.
And women like women's company sometimes.
It's a very old-fashioned view now.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing wrong with it at all. It's why mothers' groups are always popular and all that sort of thing. But it's, it's not...
That's why cul-de-sac life was very good.
Yeah. You've got your instant little community.
Rather than a high-rise where there's nowhere for people to actually meet. Yeah, you have a little circle of people.
Yeah.
Whether you like them or not, you usually get on in some way. Because you've got common problems.
You've got someone to borrow a cup of sugar off.
That's right.
Yeah. Right, anyway, enough of us two waffling on. We've got the sport with Aidan in just a moment.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
I mean, the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 8:38. Let's have a look at the sport with Aidan. Good morning.
Good morning. Thrilling day of Premier League action.
Oh, thrilling.
Yesterday. It was, though. It was. There were some really standout results. I mean, we saw Pep Guardiola in his pre-match press conference slagging off his players and saying they're the worst team in the Premier League without the ball. We've lost our fear factor. In fact, all his words looked to have been borne out yesterday early on. They conceded an early goal to Chelsea at home, and it looked for all the world as if they were going to suffer a similar fate to what they've suffered for most of the last 3 months. But they turned it round and they beat Chelsea at home, and I still think they're in with a shout of the Premier League. And I wonder, you said yesterday, Anne, you said, what are the players thinking when a manager, such an exalted figure as Pep Guardiola, says that about the players? Well, he obviously got the reaction that he wanted, because they looked at each other and thought, you know what, let's prove him wrong, let's get out there. And even though we suffered the adversity of an early setback, we went and turned it round. Elsewhere, Bournemouth, 5-0 winners against Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest hadn't lost since December the 4th. They're quite rightly in the top 2, top 3 on merit throughout this season, or certainly in the last couple of months. And they go to Bournemouth, who have been in sizzling form, 4-1 win at Newcastle last week, and they lose 5-0. And I tell you what, that manager they've got, Andoni Areola, is going to be in demand.
He knows something.
He certainly does. He certainly does. And guys like that are a premium. Arsenal suffered the loss of a player to a sending off. Miles Skelly, he was sent off. He took one for the team, if you like. Took a yellow card, which looked quite innocuous, worthy of a booking. He was sent off by the referee Michael Oliver, and the VAR backed him up as well. But they went on to win in the second half with a goal from Calafiori, so they got through that. And Liverpool stayed top of the league, 6 points clear, with a game in hand, with a convincing 4-1 win over Ipswich Town. Their manager Arne Slot, whose team actually is so efficient that they're known as the Slot Machine.
Oh, very nice.
They are. It's not one of mine, unfortunately. It was too good for one of mine. But he said it was a perfect performance, and I would fancy them now to go on and lift the Premier League title.
Let's talk the tennis in Australia at the moment, because the men's final is just about to get underway, isn't it?
Yeah, we're just minutes away. In fact, we may even be a few minutes. We're knocking up, are they? Well, look, it's a fascinating tie. We think that Yannick Sinner would be the favourite, but you just don't know. I mean, I'm just not sure how much practice or how much good that semi-final, that truncated semi-final that Zverev had against Djokovic would have done him. Because players play a lot of matches in a short period of time, you would think, well, he'd be grateful for the rest, and he probably mentally was geared up for a 4 or 5 setter against Djokovic.
So you never know, it might have upset him or it might have charged him.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's the momentum. Sorry, go on.
No, I want to ask about Djokovic.
I know, this
is... Of course, and we now know that he retired because of injury.
Yes.
Which is a terrible shame, really. And he was booed for doing so.
Well, he was. So his upper left leg was strapped up. So to me, it's hamstring, clearly. But quite cheekily yesterday, he put a picture out for the so-called sports injury experts. Let's take a look at it, because you won't necessarily instantly recognise it.
That's his thigh.
It's his thigh, exactly, yeah. How do you know that? Oh, yeah, because you're a doctor, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
So this is a scan
of his hamstring, yeah. It shows a tear. You may not be able to see there, but just at the top there are some thumbnails as well of the hamstring, where it becomes more apparent. There's a prescription at the bottom right which says that compression is required, which is normal for a hamstring injury. It doesn't say the grade of the tear, but it does show that there is a hamstring injury there. Now, if you don't recognise it straight away...
It's like a gammon joint,
It does a little bit, yeah,
horrible,
it does.
yeah.
It does. But he said that... I mean, I think that the point is it may not be recognisable to us as a hamstring injury, but he's saying that if you're a sports injury expert, as all the people on the court were when they were booing him off the other day.
Yeah.
In fact, Zverev had to go into bat for him afterwards and say, "How dare you do this? How dare you do this? You know, he's a top player. He's been through injuries winning these tournaments before." And he's saying that and Djokovic is quite cheekily saying, tongue in cheek, you know, if you're a sports injury expert, you'll recognise this.
Yes.
Yeah. No, well, fair point.
No, absolutely. Why not? Yeah.
Fair point to him.
him up.
Right, we're out of time, really. I know, it's a shame.
Good to see you both this weekend.
And you will see you next weekend.
Yep, indeed.
Right.
OK, do join us in a couple of moments because we'll be looking through the newspapers right now. Just in case you're after a holiday, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
There's plenty of sunshine on offer for many over the next couple of days in Europe, but there is some heavy rain as well, particularly for parts of Portugal, northern Spain, northwestern parts of France, and some blustery westerly winds as well continuing throughout Monday. Further east, though, there is plenty of sunshine on offer for southern parts of Italy, Greece, Cyprus, seeing plenty of sunshine throughout Monday afternoon. Temperatures here generally in the mid to high teens, with the highest temperatures likely across Tenerife, where we'll see temperatures around 22 or 23.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
A woman of 53 has believed for 18 months she was in an online relationship with Brad Pitt.
I think we're seeing pictures. So
Now,
these are the pictures that she received that made her believe that she was in this relationship with Brad Pitt.
And you'll see that some of it is in hospital because the scammer was claiming that he was suffering from cancer. This was playing very much on her emotion. So this is a divorcee who lived in Mauritius. She'd received a £700,000 divorce settlement, or £650,000 divorce settlement, I should say, and £700,000 has been taken from her through this scam.
Yeah.
As she was becoming, every time she became suspicious, the money was taken for payment of charges on gifts that she never received, and then hospital fees. There was lots of emotions being played into there. Now, as somebody, I'm a rom-com writer by trade, so I write romantic fiction. And one of the books I've written has actually been about somebody who did online dating, got herself into a whole heap of trouble. Not quite, she wasn't in a relationship with Brad Pitt, but she met somebody dodgy. So because I've written that book, I've met a lot of people who've come up to me and said, "Oh, it's happened to me."
It's scary in this digital age, isn't it?
They've lost $700,000, but somebody has tried it on. Somebody my question is, would a man go 18 months in a relationship online without seeing somebody and keep it going? Or is this feeding into this neediness of a particular demographic of a woman who that's better than anything else she got going on in her life, was what was being fed to her over the internet?
And then maybe a little bit of her knew, but she kind of just suppressed it because she
was hoping it was Brad Pitt.
Her daughter apparently for a year was saying, "This can't be true, come on, think about it." But she just fell for it. But I just wonder, it's a very sad story. She's obviously now getting a lot of hate and ridicule as well.
Because she's been on French TV and she's had a huge amount of pushback from it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Oh, our drinks have just arrived. Thank you very much. Thanks, Eva. Excellent. Perfect timing. Right, time to go through the papers with political commentator Lynn May and social campaigner Winston Davies. Morning, you two.
Morning.
Lynn, can we have a look at this one? Is the high street dead?
Oh, I don't know. You tell me, because
I don't know.
I went to the high street a week ago. My dress didn't arrive for a party and it was really, really dead. I didn't even know where to begin. Firstly, there was hardly anything in the shops, and then what I did see, it was massively expensive. So this question, I feel, and also the footfall, there's hardly anyone there.
Yeah.
Because everyone's shopping online, it's far cheaper, and with regards to this story, I think W.H. Smith understands my sentiments, because they potentially may sell 500 stores. Because they're just not seeing it as being viable anymore to have this amount of stores anymore if people are not going in there. And
we're losing banks. We've lost Woolworths.
Pubs.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And now W.H. Smith, what's going to be left?
Well, on average, last year, 12 shops closed every single day. And in 2023, over 700 pubs closed. So you can see, I think they would need to really have an incentivise us to go out, because right now there's no incentive. Parking is expensive, online is cheaper, and there's just so much more of a greater selection online.
I think it's just where we are, just as a world. Everything's just, like I said, moving online. We don't necessarily need so many shops. You know, those spaces could be used for housing. We've got a housing shortage, so we could be converting some of those over. I know you want the community, you want people to be able to go out and meet people, whatever, but actually it's so much easier just to sit on your phone, press a button, and it comes to you.
We're social creatures, though, and I think it's so bad. Everything is gearing towards, you know, individualism. What about, like you said just now, there's so many people that are maybe single or elderly, and their only chat is popping into the shop. So if we're seeing the closure of things...
But what we've got to do is, with this idea of saving the high street has gone, I think.
Do you think? It's too late?
I think it's too late in terms of shops and things. I think you've got to reinvent it. And I don't think that's just... It's not just coffee shops. I don't know. But
what would make you spend a day on the high street?
Well, I go to my high street. But my high street's thriving. And they're building a new Barclays at the moment. And all this, so there's stuff happening there.
Unusual.
I know.
Yeah, I know. It's really odd. They've just...
Are you privy to say where your high street is?
I'm not saying
things.
It's booming.
Wow.
It is booming.
Must be the only one.
But I don't know why. I don't know why it works there and not in other places. I mean...
Is there a tight-knit community where people actually enjoy lots of eateries, restaurants?
There's a mix of everything. Whereas Barrow, in Furness, where I'm originally from, where the family is, I mean, the high street there is totally dead, and they've now got rid of Boots and they've got rid of Marks and Spencers, and you can't buy a pair of socks in Barrow. You can't, as my female relatives tell me, you can't buy a bra and a pair of knickers in Barrow. You've got to order it online. There is nowhere literally to buy it at all.
You're right, though. There are a couple of other villages quite near me that have booming high streets, and they are full of little shops. They've got a huge supermarket just down the road, but they've got individual little shops. They've got a thriving local cinema there. It is a place where people like to go.
So maybe in smaller communities...
But it's easy to park.
I think it feels like it. Yeah. I think it feels like it, but so many studies have said, you know, people don't really go to the cinema that much because of Netflix, because of, you know, the availability on films, the early release. People are not drinking, the next generation. So I think when it comes to, I think it's Generation X and Boomer generation, and then the beginning of the millennials, that's the last of it, really. The younger millennials and then Gen Z, they're not doing the things that would encourage people to go to the high street, even when it comes to books. Hardly, there's less people reading books. They're doing short articles, aren't they, online, Twitter, for their news.
Yeah, you've got to encourage it. And so, but I think the big issue is parking. Get parking there, people will go.
But it's a business. It's a business argument. They're running businesses. W.H. Smith is a business. They've got. Look here. It's got £450 million worth of revenue in its shops, and it's got 1.5 billion of its travel arm. And you know, people were looking at buying the travel arm rather than the shops because that's where the money is. Again, it's online.
Where will people work, though? If we close all these shops, people in that bracket, in terms of their jobs, Where you can't just, you know, have transferable skills if all your life you've been in retail.
No, it's a problem. It is
No
a problem.
I think you're right. I think parking is key.
Yeah.
The one I've just described to you, when you think about it, they've got those short-term parking spaces where you can pop.
Yeah,
I know.
it makes a huge difference.
In London, it's awful. Parking's like for three hours in some areas, up to £25.
If you can find it.
Talking of money, Winston, in the Mail on Sunday, we're not going to get coins featuring the Queen's grandchildren, or the Queen Elizabeth's grandchildren.
Yeah, so they've just released the minutes of a meeting from 2012 and saying that it wasn't going to have the grandchildren on the Royal Mint because of the negative reputation of some of the grandchildren. Primarily Prince Harry.
It's got to be Harry, because who else has got to be?
This is it. Well, you've got obviously Prince Harry with the German uniform. You've got him jumping naked in a pool in Las Vegas.
I thought he was forgiven for all of that.
But this is 2012, right? And then you've got another grandchild, Peter Phillips, who got paid £500,000 for basic access to his wedding. So at the time they were saying it wasn't a positive view on the royals. They ended up doing something on Prince William's wedding.
Do you think there's not a thirst for it anymore?
The royals.
That's why maybe there's not really.
I think the younger generation, people are seeing what's the relevance of them to their lives and losing that identity of. What do we need a royal family, and what do they mean to our lives?
I feel like the royal family is kind of cowering as well, where they would have been proud to have a royal mint, proud to have their face on certain things. Maybe they're feeling like, you know, especially with the cost of living, it's a bit distasteful. I don't know.
Right, maybe you need to calm yourself down. Have a cuddle. If you're getting depressed by all this this morning, get yourself in the green room, cuddle up with a Care Bear.
Oh, I know. So
Care Bears.
Apparently, toy brands report surging sales in retro games and dolls. And we were having a chat about if we could remember the games. I remember when I was 12, I got Scale Electrics.
Scale Electrics.
Yeah, Scale was brilliant. And my dad always used to put a penny on the back of the Ferrari to make it go faster.
Well, no, it's because it kept jumping off the track.
To hold it down.
It has to be the most frustrating game of all, Scale Electrics.
It never stayed on.
Yeah.
It was lots of fun,
We loved ours.
Subbuteo. I had to explain to a 26-year-old this week what Subbuteo was.
Yeah, they wouldn't understand
that. Subbuteo. I was like, yeah, and he was trying to explain the thing behind it. He was like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's computerised now, isn't it?
Apparently Sylvanian families are coming back as well.
I loved them. I absolutely loved my Sylvanian. My dog chewed most of them.
You're playing with a miniature world, that's why.
Yeah, it was so cute.
It's definitely a girl's toy, that one.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the handheld games also... the Game Boys are so old
Tetris.
now.
Yeah, it's all coming back. Well, I'm glad it's coming back. It's nice.
Yeah.
Right, you two, it's been a joy. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Let's have a look at the weather.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed Heat Pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. A dry start for many of us, but a cloudy start too, and there is some rain on its way, spreading in from the southwest as we go through the rest of this afternoon. So a damp start for Devon and Cornwall and into South Wales this morning. That area of rain pushing its way north and eastwards as we head towards Sunday afternoon. There will be some sunshine across the very far north of Scotland, but that heavy rain arriving across Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England and eastern parts of England by Sunday afternoon. Heavy blustery showers feeding in quite closely behind, but perhaps a little bit milder across the very far southwest. Temperatures here 10 or 11 degrees, but generally around average elsewhere. So we then go into Sunday evening. Those heavy and blustery showers continue to feed in from the southwest. These perhaps merging to longer spells of rain at times, although there will be some breaks in those showers as we head through Sunday evening. Longer spells of rain likely though, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, into southern parts of Scotland too, and perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground here, but generally falling as rain to lower levels. Northern Scotland just holding on to those clearer skies for a time during Sunday evening, but that rain eventually pushes its way northwards through the rest of Sunday and into the start of Monday, so almost anywhere seeing a damp night to come. Further outbreaks of rain then arriving across the very far southeast, pushing northwards again into the early hours of Monday morning, so perhaps some spray on the roads here during Monday morning's rush hour, and heavy blustery showers continuing to feed in from the southwest, so generally a bit of a milder night under all of that cloud and rain. Into the start of Monday then, and low pressure very much in charge of our weather. Heavy blustery showers continue to pile in from the southwest, perhaps emerging to longer spells of rain across northern areas, and perhaps again falling as sleet and snow over any high ground. That brisk southwesterly breeze does bring us milder temperatures than we saw over the weekend. Temperatures a little above average for the time of year, so 10, perhaps 11 degrees in the south and 6 or 7 degrees further north.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is The Fuck. Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Lisa, you got in touch with me and you flagged this survey because you were concerned as a parent that your child had been given this to fill out.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter came home from school, she was very confused. She was asking why somebody would want to hurt themselves if they were feeling sad or worried about something. So that led to a conversation that we had, and I actually phoned the school and asked them to send me the survey, which with a lot of pushing, they eventually did send me the survey. And when I read through it, I was just completely shocked at the content. The survey says when I'm feeling worried that maybe I should try cutting or harming myself, because it's in the survey, so that must be an option. I've tried everything else, so why not try this?
It is astonishing that some of these are young children who are perhaps being introduced to these, these abuses for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a list of 17 different types of drugs, some of which I've actually never heard of myself. I mean, the wording on here is, have you ever got high from taking drugs? I mean...
And we know that some of these behaviours, self-harm, gender dysphoria, taking drugs, are psychologically contagious. Children do them because they see other children do them, or they find out about them from the internet or from surveys like this. So the idea that this is just information gathering and won't go any further than that is ridiculous. There was a similar survey in Scotland, I think, about 3 years ago, where children the same age, 11, 12, 13, were asked about their sex lives. How many times have you had sex in the last year? How did you have sex? Did you use contraception? Totally normalising underage sex. So the idea that children are just mini adults and we can confront them with all the same kind of ideas and dilemmas that adults have to face is just ridiculous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning. More fatal errors revealed in the Southport case.
Counter-terrorism officers failed to recognise that Axel Rudibakana was in danger of being radicalised. They believed that his fixation on massacres was just an obsession with world news.
Well, the Home Secretary will now look into changing the referral threshold for Prevent, the government's counter-terrorism scheme.
Hamas has warned of repercussions if Israel, as they say, continues to block displaced Palestinians from returning to northern Gaza. This as 4 Israeli hostages were released again yesterday.
WH Smith is in talks to sell up after more than 230 years. Could close about 500 stores in the UK. Is this another step towards the end of the high street?
And could replacing medication with therapy help cut down on the use of antidepressants?
Also this morning, Scarborough fishermen are worried their harbour is going to be turned into a tourist trap as councillors plan a multi-million-pound rejuvenation scheme.
After a dry and sunny day for many of us yesterday, there's further wet weather on the way through the rest of today. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
It's just gone 9 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Well, let's start with the new details that are emerging about how the Home Office missed several opportunities to identify the Southport child killer Axel Rudikabana as a terror threat.
Yes, it's all over the Sunday Times today, particularly. They have had access to a review, and having read it, they found that Rudibakana was referred to an anti-extremism programme 3 times.
Now, it's also revealed that he had an obsession with mass shootings. That was dismissed by counter-terror officers as an interest in world news and that he was not in danger of being radicalised.
Well, let's cross over now to our Westminster studio, where Camilla Tominey is getting ready for her show. Morning, Camilla.
Morning.
Now, I think you've got some guests that are actually going to talk about this particular subject, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And lovely to see you this morning as well, Stephen. I mean, the revelations about Prevent and how it failed in this case, along with the police and other authorities, are really quite stunning and sickening. This idea that Ruda Cabana could have been so fixated on such violent and destructive online searches, and yet at the same time it seems to me that the counter-terrorism people that assessed him couldn't quite pin him down to one ideology or another, and therefore he didn't meet the bar to be sent on from Prevent to its next programme that would have put him with a mentor and monitored his behaviour much more closely. So to discuss that, I'm going to be speaking to the Treasury Minister, James Murray, because there's been huge criticism, of course, of Keir Starmer in all this. A lot of that has come from Reform, Nigel Farage, but also its chairman, Zia Youssef, who has accused the Prime Minister of telling premeditated and deliberate lies. He's coming on the show as well, so we'll be speaking to him. And I've got the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch, who's also been vocal in her criticism of the government's handling of this when she's been addressing the Prime Minister at Prime Minister's Questions. So those three guests are going to tackle all of the different questions we have to ask about this, what went wrong. Also questions, and I know they're awkward questions, but I think it's something to be discussed about what role the Southport killers' parents may have played. Have they done enough? They're now in hiding, and I appreciate that's difficult, and I'm sure some people will have some sympathy for them. But we did see a poll out in the week suggesting that around 70% of Brits think the parents should have done more to stop him. And you've been talking about that report from the Centre for Social Justice about whether we're over-medicalising everyday anxieties. Danny Kruger has been involved with that, the Tory MP. He's going to come on. But I also want to discuss with him, we seem to have a vacuum here. We've got, on one hand, the number of antidepressants being prescribed to people who might not need them doubling in the last decade. And at the same time, the Southport killer, basically on the loose, clearly with very, very significant and serious mental health problems, in some way falling through the net. It strikes me that they couldn't pin down what ideology he was following, and yet at the same time, nobody swooped in when he was obsessing over horrific online content. He was repeatedly being flagged by different schools for his violent behaviour. He was carrying a knife on a number of occasions, and the police didn't stop him. What happened to that idea of children carrying knives and instantly being arrested?
This is the problem. It makes no sense, and it leads, unfortunately, leads to more allegations of a cover-up with it. I know there have been allegations, Nigel Farage made allegations of a cover-up, which were dismissed by government at the time. However, of course, we have had these revelations now, haven't we, that more information, the police wanted to release more information close after this event. That was stopped by the CPS. I mean, there's all these questions that need to be addressed.
Also, I'm going to be interested in Kemi Badenoch's response to some of this rhetoric around whether there were extra sensitivities because the Southport killer was black and was a kind of vulnerable black teenager, and could that have a part to play? Because when we come to this inquiry, so many different aspects of this are going to be looked at. Was there a case that people held off a bit because, a little bit like with the grooming gangs, they were fearful of allegations of racism? Could that have had a part to play? I appreciate that the public inquiry will hopefully answer some of these questions, but I think what we need to do today on my show is just ask some of the direct and honest questions that others seem to be avoiding, because clearly the audience is trying to find out what the motivations could have been for not stopping him in his tracks. And that's what I want to drill into. And obviously I've got the best guests on at 9:30 onwards to do that.
Yes, it wasn't just about racism either, was it? It was about medicalisation in a way. Very clearly, it was identified by some that he was neurodivergent or may have had a neurodivergence problem, and that there's even a suggestion that they laid off because of that, because they sensed that this was an area they didn't want to go into.
precisely. And you get the impression that conversations may have taken place behind closed doors when dealing with Ruda Cabana along the lines of, we better be careful here, we don't want to be accused of this, he is displaying symptoms of autism and therefore we need to be careful there. But the point is, if you've got a boy carrying knives in school and the school flagging him, you've got a boy behaving very oddly at home and the parents are flagging him. And as you say, as the reports have revealed, he's been flagged to Prevent 3 times and he hasn't reached the threshold. One needs to ask oneself, what is the threshold? If it isn't a child obsessing over school shootings, admitting to carrying a knife, we forget as well, there was the call to Childline. He called Childline and said he wanted to kill someone. What is the bar to be referred further than Prevent to get help than this?
Well, I mean, the Home Secretary's talked about reducing the threshold. But is threshold even the right way to look at this? I mean, there should be just elements of common sense, case-by-case analysis.
But it seems as if, because he didn't go from that further, if you go from Prevent and you go one step up, you do get more tailored help. He returned to the local mental community health team. He was referred to local police and schools. It strikes me that, unfortunately, they just weren't equipped to cope with what he was about to go on and do. I appreciate hindsight is a wonderful thing, but there were so many opportunities here that seem to have been missed. And I think also, you know, it speaks to a lack of faith in the state in general. There's this overriding feeling that the state isn't working and that it's failing its people. We've seen this before. We've seen this with the Valdo Callicane case. I've interviewed Emma Webber, mother of Barnaby Webber, one of the Nottingham students who was killed by Callicane. You know, this pattern keeps on repeating itself. And in this case, we've lost 3 young girls, 10 other victims with life-changing injuries. I mean, you can't look at the pictures of the girls and ask yourself serious questions about how on earth this was able to happen.
Yes, especially when we believed that Prevent were that was the gold standard counter-terrorism organisation, very clearly. In this case, anyway, it had flaws. Camilla, we look forward to your programme. Thanks very much indeed.
I mean, I just find the whole thing extraordinary. That this idea of threshold, and yes, I see there are cases for having a threshold and you have to reach it and all the rest of it.
But that sounds like a box-ticking exercise.
Well, it does, doesn't it? That's my point. Why on earth do these groups not sit down, get together and go, clearly there is an issue. There is an issue here that needs to be looked at more deeply. And the fact that that isn't being done, as you say, box-ticking would seem to be the thing.
Because are they trained to tick a box? If he is following a particular sort of radicalisation, then you tick a box. But because they believed that there was no one particular cause he was espousing, but there wasn't there? It was called violence, extreme and awful violence. That was his cause, by the look of it. But they dismissed the terrorism idea because of that.
Dismissed that, even though then it was discovered that there was ricin, which he'd been making, and all these other, and this Al-Qaeda manual, and that wasn't released. The CPS decided that information could not be made public, despite the fact the police wanted to. The police wanted to announce that to try and give us, as the public, and particularly the people in that area, more information about what was going on.
Is it a defence to say at that stage, when they were suppressing that information from us, that they still believed that he was going to plead not guilty and that there would be a full trial?
Well, that's what they're saying. That's what they're saying.
Because he changed his plea at the very last minute.
But even so, there's an element where, you know, if ricin has been discovered in a property, then it's not prejudicial to say it's been discovered in a property, is it?
No.
So they should have done that.
But that more or less paints you straight away as a terrorist, doesn't it, if you're making ricin?
Yeah, well,
I don't know. I mean, I don't know on that one, but all I do know is that it could have been a very lengthy and awful trial. I mean, they're saying it could have lasted 8 to 12 weeks. Can you imagine?
No.
But he did, in the end, change his plea.
That's
but it still means that the only way we're going to find out any more information and any sort of reason as to why he might have done what he did or become so I was going to use the word radicalised, but maybe that's not the word. The only way we'll know now is if the inquiry does its job properly.
I'll tell you what, though, it's the one thing that strikes me every time we talk about it, having the inquiry which are going to change everything, but they should never happen again, all this sort of language, what difference does that make to the families of all those involved in this?
Don't you get fed up with people saying lessons must be learned?
Yeah.
Yep. OK, right, shall we move on?
Let's.
It's 12 minutes past 9. Israel has prevented thousands of displaced Palestinians from returning home to northern Gaza. That's according to Hamas. And Hamas have now... now the Israelis have accused Hamas of breaching the ceasefire deal.
Well, all this comes, of course, as 4 female Israeli soldiers were released yesterday, thankfully reunited with their families after being held in Gaza for 15 months.
Let's talk to the former National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister, Sir Mark Lyle Grant, who joins us now. And a very good morning to you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. What are your thoughts, having watched the release yesterday of those 4 hostages, and now the complaints that are going on from either side this morning? It seems that this ceasefire and this agreement to release hostages is very fragile.
It is very fragile, but it's also very welcome. I think we should celebrate the fact that at least 7 of the agreed 33 hostages who are to be released in phase 1 of this plan have actually been released. So that's a good start. And every week there will be more people released over this first 42 days of the agreement. But as you say, it is very fragile. Israel is accusing Hamas of not releasing a civilian female hostage, Arbel Yehud. Hamas says they were going to release her next week, not this week. And Israel has used that as an excuse not to allow the Palestinians who have been displaced from northern Gaza to return to their homes in the north. My personal view is that this first phase, the 42 days until the end of February, probably will hold with some toing and froing and arguing about violations. But the key issue is, will it translate into the second phase, which is supposed to start at the beginning of March, which could lead to a permanent ceasefire in this horrendous conflict between Hamas and Israel?
I mean, the problem there would seem to be that even Netanyahu isn't that convinced about actually that process moving forward, which would ultimately mean a 2-state solution by the end of it all.
Exactly. And he's already lost one of his right-wing cabinet colleagues as a result of this agreement. And Smotrich, the other one, is threatening to resign if this deal goes ahead further. So I think Netanyahu's in a difficult position. I think he hasn't achieved everything he wanted to achieve militarily against Hamas. Yes, he's heavily damaged them, killed their leader. But as you've seen from the releases on television, Hamas fighters still in balaclavas and the green headbands are showing that they aren't finished yet. So his aim to completely destroy Hamas has not been achieved. And I think that is very worrying for Netanyahu.
Yes, and as people do re-enter Gaza, nobody will know how many are Hamas and how quickly they could reform.
Absolutely. I don't think Hamas has any intention of going away completely. The Palestinian Authority, who are in charge in the West Bank, who should be the people who are also in charge in Gaza, are very weak and don't appear to have the capability of displacing Hamas in Gaza. So I think the risk is that despite this horrendous, 15-month war with over 48,000 civilians killed in Gaza and many, many Israelis as well, will just lead to a further cycle of violence further down the track.
Oh, that's the worry, isn't it? Let's hope that doesn't happen, of course. So, Mark, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Right, we'll take a short break in a moment, and then we'll be talking about how something like 6 planets.
I think it's 6 planets.
It's going to be an extraordinary year for seeing 6 planets that are perfectly going to align. We'll find out more on what that means in a couple of moments.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We were talking earlier about the issue of Siri listening to you. Well, it's not just your own conversations being sort of harvested for data, but it's a problem with AI. So what seems to have happened yesterday is that Apple issued a alert saying that Luke Littler had won the darts before he had. I mean, imagine what would, if he then gone on to lose, how that would have looked. I mean, obviously, because he went on to win, at least they got the story right, but before it had happened. So what it seems to happen is that the AI farms existing stories, and what it has done, that's the alert. We can see the alert there now, and it also claiming that Brazilian tennis player Rafael Nadal had come out as gay when actually a different Brazilian tennis player was actually mentioned in the original story. So what it does is you see that's branded as BBC Sport. What the Apple AI system does is it farms alerts that it thinks people are getting from the source and then summarises them into one. That's going to be my question. Into one alert.
Looks to me like you would assume, OK, the BBC are reporting this.
Absolutely.
So the BBC News might be saying something else.
So it could happen to any news organisation.
This has highlighted a massive issue. I mean, having editorial judgment and quality control, because if this is going on, it's just contributing to the flow of misinformation. Yes. And we know that this is a problem on social media, people reporting false things. But if it seems to come from trusted news sources, that is a massive issue in credibility. I mean, if you had something like Reuters, who's a big news provider, doing this, you could hold people accountable, you could make changes, but when it's the AI doing it, I mean, what do? You're going to have to reprogram it in some way.
And if you just lost control, if you're a news source, you've lost control of what goes out, because it basically farms it, puts your logo on it and sends it out even when it's nonsense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Now, time is running out if you want to get your hands on £50,000, absolutely tax-free. There's only 5 days left to enter. Here's how you do it.
Yeah, good luck. And if you win, you should invest in a telescope. Because if you love watching the stars, keep your eyes out this year, because Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, Uranus and Neptune are going to be visibly aligned in the night sky.
Yes, it's known as the Planetary Parade. It will take place tonight and for most of February. The next major planetary alignment won't happen until 2040.
So what's it all about? Let's speak to space expert Andy Lowndes, who joins us now. Morning, Andy.
Good morning. Thank you for having me back.
Now, how come this is happening?
Yeah, it's just a line of sight effect, really. The planets, as they all orbit about the sun, and Earth, of course, is orbiting inwards compared to that of Uranus, Neptune, Jupiter and Saturn. And Venus, of course, orbits outside of, is closer to the sun than us. And just by a fluke, at this moment in time, during their orbits, they've actually come into a position they're on one side of the sun, so we can actually all see them all more or less lined up. It's not a perfect alignment because they can be closer, but as you correctly said, it's a parade across the sky, so they're actually just happen to be in just the right place for you to go out and have a look. And it's perfect because you can go out just after sunset. The first thing you'll see is look towards the south. You can't miss it. It's as bright as you think it's an aeroplane until you stare at it, and that's Venus. Beautiful white shining. Look just below that, you'll see a non-blinking star. Planets don't blink, only stars twinkle. And that is the planet Saturn. So then you move left up and you'll see another bright object, that's Jupiter. Move further to the left and you'll see a red one, and that's Mars, which is just after opposition, its closest approach to us. Now, in between Jupiter and Venus, there is Uranus and Neptune, but you won't be able to see those with the naked eye. You'll need a pair of binoculars or a telescope to actually see those. And I would suggest you get some sort of an app either for your phone or something, and that will actually pinpoint their exactness. So from Venus scanning upwards all the way to your left across the sky, you'll be able to see all these planets. And better still, later in the month, you might be able to catch Mercury as well, but do not attempt to see Mercury with binoculars because it's too close to the sun, you'll hurt yourself. So get to high ground. But later in the month, you'll see Mercury as well. So you get a great opportunity to see 7 planets, and you're standing on the 8th.
I know, isn't that brilliant?
A lot.
It's really fantastic. I mean, it's everything to count.
That is
isn't it?
incredible.
Lovely stuff, Andy. Always, it's a joy to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. I love the fact that, you know, a pair of binoculars for Neptune and Uranus should be enough. You don't have to go and splash out on a fancy telescope. You can just catch them.
And as Andy said,
binoculars.
you're standing on the 8th. Isn't that fantastic? That's really exciting.
Very clever stuff. Something to do tonight and over the next few days.
Yeah, let's hope for clear skies.
Yeah. Right, look, thank you for your company this weekend. But that is it from us.
Do stay tuned. Camilla Tominey coming up next.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. A dry start for many of us, but a cloudy start too, and there is some rain on its way, spreading in from the southwest as we go through the rest of this afternoon. So a damp start for Devon and Cornwall and into South Wales this morning. That area of rain pushing its way north and eastwards as we head towards Sunday afternoon. There will be some sunshine across the very far north of Scotland, but that heavy rain arriving across Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England and eastern parts of England by Sunday afternoon. Heavy blustery showers feeding in quite closely behind, but perhaps a little bit milder across the very far southwest. Temperatures here 10 or 11 degrees, but generally around average elsewhere. As we then go into Sunday evening, those heavy and blustery showers continue to feed in from the southwest. These perhaps merging to longer spells of rain at times, although there will be some breaks in those showers as we head through Sunday evening. Longer spells of rain likely, though, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, into southern parts of Scotland too, and perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground here, but generally falling as rain to lower levels. Northern Scotland just holding on to those clearer skies for a time during Sunday evening, but that rain eventually pushes its way northwards through the rest of Sunday and into the start of Monday. So almost anywhere seeing a damp night to come. Further outbreaks of rain then arriving across the very far southeast, pushing northwards again into the early hours of Monday morning. So perhaps some spray on the roads here during Monday morning's rush hour, and heavy blustery showers continuing to feed in from the southwest. So generally a bit of a milder night under all of that cloud and rain. Into the start of Monday then, and low pressure very much in charge of our weather. Heavy blustery showers continue to pile in from the southwest, perhaps emerging to longer spells of rain across northern areas, and perhaps again falling as sleet and snow over any high ground. That brisk southwesterly breeze does bring us milder temperatures than we saw over the weekend. Temperatures a little above average for the time of year, so 10, perhaps 11 degrees in the south and 6 or 7 degrees further north.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ironic article in The Guardian, Nick, caring about facts.
Yeah, this is Meta is ushering in a world without facts, says Nobel Peace Prize winner. And they just seem to give these Nobel Peace Prizes to anyone these days. So it's Maria Ressa.
Not working.
Zuckerberg came out, and it was very bold. He said a few things. We're going to use community notes instead of fact checkers. Fact checkers in inverted commas, because it just means people pushing usually a specific viewpoint. Community notes seems to be a great system that X uses, so why not do that? I think that's great. He's going to reduce restrictions on topics like immigration and gender. Good, because I'm against censorship. He's going to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor